It is a little chilly. It's normally warm.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the White Lake Township regular board meeting for April 17th. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, would you care to do roll call, please?
Liz Smith,
Present.
Andrea Voorhees,
Present.
Mike Powell.
Here.
Scott Ruggles.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Lilly is here. Mr. Supervisor.
Here. Looking for a motion for the approval of the agenda. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Supervisor? I have a question under the list of bills, and so I wondered if we could remove the list of bills so I could ask a question of that.
Thank you. I have a question too.
Okay. Make a motion to remove that item from the agenda?
On the consent agenda.
From the
Want to
consent agenda?
discuss that, or you want to remove it?
You want to remove it?
Just discuss it, so we'll have to add it
Remove
as a
it for-
discussion item.
Correct. Okay, we'll remove it. You want to just add a discussion item on it, or do you want to remove it, discuss it, and then approve it?
I'd like to remove it, discuss it, and then adopt it.
Okay. So, we'll remove that item. What item is it?
Item A, 6A.
6A? I'd like to remove, I make a motion to remove item 6A from the consent agenda for discussion and later consideration.
That was my same question, so that's perfect.
Motion,
Motion, support.
support, motion support, all in favor?
Aye.
Shall be removed and discussed.
Where are you going to discuss it on the agenda?
We'll discuss it right after the consent agenda. We'll move it to item 6,
F.
immediately after consent agenda.
Okay.
Okay. We'll plug it in. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk, please proceed.
Mr. Supervisor, a number of items to put back on the agenda. One is the new list of bills dated 4/17/18 that you have in front of you. Also, the addition of the treasurer's report. There are also in front of you are two bid items for item 9F. There's some information regarding the Ivy Glen material, item H, 9H. And also there'd be an addition of an item 9J. We'll talk about a motion that needs to be remade in regards to a previous rezoning approval that was never advertised by the spinal column. So we need to reapprove that motion for advertisement.
Okay, what item is that going to be?
That item will be 9J.
9G should come off too.
Yes.
And removal of 9G. Reapprove, and what's the specific site, I'm sorry, what was the specific site of that for 9J?
9J.
Okay, anything else?
That's all I have, Mr.
A
Supervisor.
motion for the changes?
If there's no other discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
I have a motion,
Support.
motion support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to, yeah. I beg your pardon? Yes, I know, we'll get there. Moving on to public comment. At this time, if anybody would like to make a comment of items that are not on the agenda, I would like you to come forward, state your name, and you have 3 minutes to inform us as to what you would like to speak about. Yes.
Keep Channel 8771 Townsend Drive. I guess my comment is directed to Liz Smith. My understanding is Pam Collins was elected to the library board in 2016. She's subsequently passed in 2017 in January. That position was filled, appointed by the library board. And within the first, if that position is appointed within the first 18 months, it has to be re-elected. You have to be elected again in the even year of an election, which is this year. I would assume that our representative, not a liaison, but the representative to the library, and our trustee member, who also represents the voters of the township, during trustee's comment, would have made a comment stating that there is an open position on the library board, and any person capable of being on that board in the township, please submit your application. The deadline is April 24th at 4 o'clock. So I'll make it known on YouTube if there's any qualified candidates that want to get on the library board, please get your information in by the 24th before the 4 o'clock. But like I said, I would have expected the trustee to make that comment. Who's our rep?
Thank you, Mr. Pinciano. Anyone else with a comment? Mr. Hankus.
My name is Doug Hankus, 10115 Joanna K, White Lake, Michigan, and I missed the last month's meeting, so you may have discussed this, although the minutes of the meeting weren't up on your site yet, so I couldn't find out. But I would like to know what's going on with the Brendel Lake Campground. Obviously, you have either purchased it or made an offer, because they have taken down their for sale sign and they've closed it for the summer because supposedly you've already bought it. So I would like to know, if you have bought it, how you intend to do so, if you got a purchase agreement, how much, and how you're going to pay for it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hankus.
No, can you answer the question, please?
This is public comment. I won't get into that right now.
Okay.
And it's pretty knowledgeable. There was a rather extensive meeting. If you watch the taped version of it, it'll pretty
I
well...
tried to, but I couldn't hear it. The volume was real low.
If you watch that, it'll tell you everything you need to know. I'll be happy to get you a set of minutes as soon as they're approved tonight.
Okay, and which meeting is that?
It was last month's meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're buying it for $2 million, you're getting $1,000, is that correct?
I'm not getting into all the dynamics. It's all in the meeting and in the minutes. You'll see it all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, whoop, young lady with the green on. And it is bright green.
It is. Hoping for spring for the bright green. Susan Deal, 9170 Twin Lakes Drive. I just wanted to extend the appreciation from our subdivision, Twin Lakes Village, across the way, to Trustee Powell and Supervisor Colwell for coming to our association meeting last week. It was late in the evening, and I know you guys are busy. You have full-time jobs, but you came out and you spoke to our group, and really appreciate it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. You're very welcome. You, sir.
Jean-Philippe Leuve, 247 Rosario Lane. Jean-Philippe Leuve, 247 Rosario Lane. I noticed that, and I heard also that the project at the intersection between Union and Cooley is kind of in a standstill position. And maybe that might be an opportunity when this project is happening to extend or connect. There are two subdivisions just north of it that one of them has a sidewalk, so the one doesn't, and there are two houses where this subdivision could be connected to this project now. I'm thinking about maybe a similar arrangement than what Mr. Powell did just south of the Meyer, where when all the machines are there, they quote and get a better quote, a better deal to install a sidewalk at the same time, integrate it in the landscape. Just an idea, suggestion, an opportunity that we have to make it at a lower cost.
Thank you very much. Anyone else at this time? Yes, sir.
Jim Liker, 4589 Pasture Lane.
Last name, Jim?
Liker, L-I-K-E-R. Excuse me. I come before you tonight to ask the board to seriously consider the staffing within the fire department to get their fire stations open. I understand there's an item on the agenda tonight to potentially carry the grant position within the fire department that's due to expire soon, possibly fund that through the end of the year. The residents voted a millage back in 14 with an increase of 0.5 to maintain services. We haven't maintained services, we've actually increased services, but we still don't have our stations opened. Station 3 is closed, there's nobody there. We need to get those stations open, and I hope that's a priority of this board. Ms. Smith, during her campaign, knocking on door to door, was on my doorstep. I asked her what's going to take to get my fire station open, and she said more funding. We've given more funding, and that station is still closed. So hopefully this is a very strong priority for this board to get that station open.
Very good, sir.
And I'm also, just so you know, a 23-year member of your on-call department. So
Thank you.
I know what's going on with
Thank you
the
for your
staffing
service.
with that. So thank you.
Thank you. It's still a priority to me.
Sorry.
It's still a priority to me. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else, please? Okay, with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk? Consent agenda? Anything you want to
What
add?
would you like me to do on the consent agenda? You want to talk about the bills, or?
We can do that if you want to.
Mr. Supervisor,
I beg your pardon.
I move to approve the consent agenda as been modified.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
A second.
I have support, I have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on to item 6 sub B, we'll call that. It'll be the discussion of 6A. Mr. Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I had a question that maybe you or the staff could answer. On the list of bills is a $15,600 payment to IT Right for IT services. And then later on down the agenda in, I'm sorry here, 8E is a resolution to work with Oakland County on IT services. And I'm wondering if anyone can let me know what the difference is between those two contracts.
I certainly can. The one with Oakland County doesn't have a cost, it's just an operation agreement. Okay, so we have to, when we do our Clemis and all the other services that are provided through the Oakland County, whatever we digitally, electronically go back and forth with, we have to operate under their agreement. That's all it is. We sign that every year. That's not, nothing's ever changed. The other one is the IT Right, which is our technical end of the services for our computer technology and all our in-house IT. They're completely two separate items.
Okay, so one's for a service and dealing with Oakland County, the other one is operating our in-house.
Actual technical problems when we need to have an update in our computer systems or a software or a bug or something that needs to be taken care of. That's what IT Right does.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we weren't
There's a
overlapping
differentiation. No. There's
Okay.
no duplication. There's a differentiation. That's exactly what those two are.
Okay.
One is just an operating agreement, much like a right-of-way agreement and such that you're very familiar with. That you
Yeah.
just, if you want to deal with the county, you got to sign the agreement. So it's the same type of thing for our Clemis, for our police, and all the other intercommunications that we have, whether it's assessor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So that's what that is. That's just that interconnection, connecting services. And again, the other one is for actual technical services from a
Okay,
subcontract.
thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
You're very welcome. Okay. Did I answer that?
So I had a couple additional questions about that renewal as well. We're not up for renewal until May 21st, so I had some questions of have we explored other options in IT Right? I asked for a breakdown of our contract renewal from 2017 and 18 and our updated sheet of exactly what we're paying for. And one of my concerns is compared to neighboring communities, we're a little behind here in technology. And I wanted to know if we've explored other options of other companies, have we explored in-house, our own IT in-house. I know that Commerce has offered the opportunity to discuss if we can share their IT. So I just was hoping that we've had explored this, or can we look at other options? This is a large bill and we're not quite up to par technology-wise compared to our neighboring communities.
Well, it's considerably less than what we paid Waterford when we had them under contract. It's less than half. And we've been very satisfied with, and the staff is satisfied with working with them with whatever technical problems we have. And since it's user-driven and they are the users, and if they're happy with it and it's functional, and it is, we know it's a competitive price for the services that we've gotten in the past, we're continuing with that service.
But did we explore any other options?
Not at this time because there's no dissatisfaction to do so. No more than I would want to change attorneys.
What I heard from the staff is the delay of not it being in-house. Because sometimes we have to wait, and as residents as well, they have to wait a little bit for the second step for it to get online.
In-house is going to be much more expensive. I will tell
It
you
might
right
be.
now.
I just was wondering.
It'll
if
probably
we need to compare
excess.
it to.
It'll probably excess of $40,000 to $60,000 to have an in-house individual. Because if you had an in-house individual, they would be dedicated, and more or less, very well could become an employee of the township. And it's a field that we found makes more economic sense at this time to farm out. And there's been no dissatisfaction with any of the departments in the services. So, and I go by that information because they're the ones that use it on a daily basis.
Yeah, they do. I was just curious if we explored anyone else.
When the township switched to IT, right, wasn't it just like 2 years ago?
Yeah.
At that time, didn't you go out for bids?
Yes, we did.
So,
We did. We started with them in it looks like June of 17.
So it's really just a year, a little over a year. Well, not quite a year. June is, no,
no, it feels
that doesn't
like
sound
it's-
right, Liz.
It feels like it was because I remember it was after an MTA
Yeah.
conference when Greg was interested and wanted to
Correct.
look.
It's his fault.
Okay, well, those were my questions. Because we save costs with sharing with Commerce at all? Did we explore any other cost saving? And I know there is some concern of the delay when things go,
There's very little delay with IT Right. They've been very, very responsive. We've been very happy with their services that they're providing us.
Okay, we can always do better, though, so I was hoping to explore, to come up. We need a little boost in technology around here.
There doesn't seem to be any dissatisfaction with any of the department heads. As a matter of fact, some of our departments have really surged forward with some of the technology through having services that we have available to us. So we're doing quite well, actually. So, okay.
Yeah, those are my questions.
Thank you. Okay. And yes, sir.
If there are no other questions on that, I move to approve the list of bills as presented.
In particular, item 6A.
Particularly item 6A as on the agenda.
Okay. Motion, support?
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 7, approval of the minutes of regular board meeting on March 13th, 2018. For a motion to approve or comment?
I have one amendment to it.
Okay.
And I believe it's page 9. There were several members from HOAs that started on page 8. I know Mr. Lovejoy was one of them. And I just wanted to make a notation in the notes here, in the minutes, that I did address their concerns and address their concern of having resident involvement in the committee. And that wasn't noted in the minutes, and I would like the minutes to reflect that we did pledge to them that they would have resident involvement.
So noted.
Thank you.
Anything else? Looking for a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Motion to approve minutes as amended.
Support.
Support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item 8A, resolution number 18-004, West Nile virus expense reimbursement. Mr. Potter, you want to touch on that?
Yes, DPS would like to once again participate
Now
in
stop
Oakland
1
County's.
second. Did you hear that? DPS. Okay, Department of Public Services. And again, I'd like to welcome you to that position. It's your first official act. Very good. All right, go ahead. I had to take that stab.
Thank you. So DPS would like to participate in the West Nile virus abatement program with Oakland County. We've been in the program since 2016. And last year we gave away close to $10,000 worth of mosquito repellent. We put mosquito pellets in retention ponds, lakes, sanitary basins, everywhere we could find to put one. I think that residents generally seem to like it, and it keeps these dangerous viruses, West Nile, Zika virus, those kind of things out of our community. And we would like to present this resolution for the board to, the board needs to adopt this. Again, like anything in Oakland County, you need a resolution to participate, so.
Okay, and our reimbursement would be $55,2680?
Correct. We are, last year we spent, I'll go back 2 years, 2016, there was more funding because of upsurge in Zika virus. We spent in 2016 $89.45. We received $89.70 in a grant. Then in 2017, we spent roughly $3,691 after the grant refund of $5,526. We did have additional mosquito pellets left over for the retention ponds because of Mike's injury, Mike McAdams' injury. So we used those. We bought one additional case. This year we will need 2 cases to apply that at the same level we did last year. So our grant is going to be $5,526, and we will spend $4,512.
Okay, it's a very worthy cause, and I think we need to do that from a health and public safety standpoint. It's pretty amazing that, you know, you go back a number of years and no one ever heard of Zika virus or any of these things, and they seem to be creeping up on us. Then they come from God only knows where. So the prevention is important, and I know the county is definitely making an effort to move forward with it. So, looking for any questions? Or?
May I ask a
Yes,
question
sir.
first?
Yes.
Am I reading this correctly? The cost of the product that we are purchasing is just a little over $9,000, and we're having a check reimbursed or a reimbursement from Oakland County of about $5,500.
Correct.
Who actually installs or drops the tablets in the ponds and the catch basins in the various stagnant water areas?
We do.
We do. So we have employee expense hourly charges from the township for that. So
Correct.
the total cost of the process is not $4,000. There's some labor involved in that as well, correct?
Correct. So last year it took us roughly 2 days with one. It took us about 16 man hours to get all those mosquito pellets out into the ponds. We did not have an accurate cost tracking mechanism last year like we do now with our city works. So, I mean, after this year, we'll be able to, accurately cost exactly what it.
Okay, I certainly think it's still a worthwhile program, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understood there's more cost than this. So, thank you.
A little, but not a lot.
Yes.
It's not a lot of time. We don't spend a great deal of, labor on it.
And a lot of this is done in conjunction with other tasks. So if they're in an area that they're doing something else, they plop it in wherever they're going and doing what they're doing, in the manholes and such. So it's not just 100% dedicated to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have the resolution on the floor, looking for approval, adoption.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 18004.
Okay, motion to approve, looking for support.
Support.
Motion support, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, thank you. Okay, we have 8B, resolution number 18-005, designating precinct 5 temporary polling place location. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Supervisor, we were informed several months ago from the Waterford School District that they would be doing a substantial amount of improvement after school is out to the Houghton Elementary School. We have recently received approval from the White Lake Oaks Golf Course to be able to move Precinct 5 to their facility. We will be sending out new ID cards for the election. We will be putting up a 4x8 sign at the Houghton School, directing any of those that are not aware at election time that the precinct has been moved. And just to define the area of Precinct 5, it's really the area that encompasses the Twin Lakes subdivision, suburban Knolls, and a portion of the people that are to the east of Oxbow Lake. Probably will be even closer for them than the Houghton School, but we want to make sure that that is well known. And like I say, we will be getting out new ID cards for only the primary election for this year.
Very good. Okay.
The resolution in front of us is basically the board approving Resolution 18005 for us to move that precinct to that location.
Very good. Looking for support, motion for motion of support. Excuse me, looking for a motion, I beg your pardon.
I'll make a motion for
Okay,
that.
motion now I'm looking for support.
I'll support with a question for you, Terry. So this is just for the November or the August primary, correct?
It'll be only for the August primary.
And all those
correct.
cards will be sent back out again for the November election because it'll be relocated back. Okay.
They will be informed on this ID card that will only be for the primary
August, okay.
election.
Thank you.
Very good. A motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. Item 8C, Resolution 18-06, Foley Lake Goose Nest Egg Destruction, 2018 to 2022 permit application. Do we have anyone here from Foley Lake? Apparently not. Well, this is typically a resolution to allow the permitting process for the control of the subsequent nuisance creatures. They seem to be at this time of the year. This is a 5-year resolution for Canadian geese nest and egg destruction, and it does require the USDA Wildlife Service Department to review it and also part of their application. And we have to have this resolution in order for them to apply for that permit. So it's a humane way to try to control some of the geese that are out there. And as we all know, if there's a story about a successful comeback species, it's the Canadian goose. Although I was just at a meeting the other day with the OCATS, which is the Oakland County Supervisors Group, and had a meeting with the wildlife management. Julie, it escapes me her last name, but a very nice young lady. And the number one, public enemy number one, the turkey. Okay, they're becoming extremely aggressive, so it'll be interesting to see how that's handled. So I'm looking for approval for this resolution to allow this permit application.
Make a motion to approve resolution 18-006.
All right, I have a motion to approve, looking for support.
I'll support that also.
A motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. 8D, Resolution 18-008, amendment of the Library Bond Resolution number 17042. Mr. Clerk, I know you had some questions on that, or did you have anything you want to add to that at this moment in time?
Which one?
On the library rep bond resolution?
Mr. Supervisor, just state for the record, I don't want to confuse the issue tonight. The issue before us is an amendment to the original resolution granting the library an additional time for receipt of a couple permits. And I'll kind of defer that over to Sean to talk about that, but there's a number of items that I'd like to be able to place on the record tonight, and I don't want that confused with the amending of the bond resolution. So I'd like to kind of take that as two separate items. I
you
don't
wanna-
want to confuse it in the standpoint that if we make changes to the bond resolution, then we're going to have to come back and do that at a later time, and it's not my intentions to do that, but I do have a number of items that I want to have on the record with the board of items that will be, I believe will be necessary and on the record for pre-construction meeting.
Would you care
Prior
to,
to construction.
would you care to concede for a moment until we go through that resolution, then come back and address them after the resolution?
Yeah, whatever
Okay.
whoever wants to go through
all right.
the
Mr. O'Neill, do you have some input on
I
this?
can just report that the site plan has been approved as was required. The engineering plans have been approved as was required. Believe the MDEQ permit, according to Mr. Potter, is being reviewed this week for the water main. We have no reason to believe that permit won't be issued. It's in good order. Our engineer reviews it. Mr. Potter looks at it as well before it is sent off to the DEQ once the engineer for the library submits it. So it appears to be in good order, and we have confidence that that will be coming back in the next couple of weeks. The Oakland County Road Commission permit is one that's on the list that's needed for pre-con. That's under review, and actually I spoke with Denise yesterday. She got some minor comments back, and I believe that they anticipate having that permit approval by the end of this month. The Oakland County SESC permit was submitted on 4/13. According to Mr. Aaron Phillips, who is the general contractor on the site, they anticipate that by the beginning of May, he's saying about May 4th, they anticipate having that permit back, which will then allow them to make application for the NPDES permit, which is through the state. That permit is not something that the township really gets involved with other than making sure it's gotten. And as I understand it from talking to Johnson and Anderson, and maybe Mr. Potter could expound on that, but once they get the SESC permit from the county, they submit that with notice of coverage to the state and some other documents, and then once the state receives that, they're considered covered by the state, and then it may take a few weeks to process it, but they effectively have permit coverage at that time.
Correct.
Okay. That was something that I learned in this process, the NPDES part of it. So those are the items that are outstanding. I know in speaking with the library, they wish to begin construction in early May. And, I would certainly like some direction from you folks based on the action that's taken tonight, indicating whether or not you're okay with that. We don't traditionally have all of these permits in hand weeks ahead of the pre-con. They usually get collected and they kind of funnel into our office the days leading up to the pre-con, and sometimes the pre-con meeting is happening and the items are handed over at that time. The other item that's I should mention that we're waiting on is the insurance, but that's been resolved, and I have no reason to believe that we couldn't have that before the end of this week if we needed it. So I'm satisfied that they're on pace to have everything that we needed or that our department would traditionally need from an applicant by the time of their pre-con early next month.
Very good. Mr. Potter, any comment?
No, I spoke with our district engineer at MDEQ. She informed me that they would be reviewing their water main permit today, so I don't expect to have any delays in
Any
that.
issues? Okay. And this would be treated no different than we would any other project that would come before the
Right.
township board. Some of these permits just kind of lag on after the fact. They don't always get here in exactly a timely manner, but that's just part of the process. Any questions from the board members? Mr. Powell?
I have a statement, but not necessarily a question.
Okay. I asked for questions.
Okay, then I'll wait for my statement.
Any questions? I've learned behavior with him. So.
Very wise.
Okay, now any statements?
Sorry. I think it was the board's intent, and certainly was my intent, when we passed the resolution for selling of the bonds to make sure that this board was satisfied that we would know as close as possible the cost to build the library. If the bids came in $2 million over budget, obviously there'd be a backtrack and we'd want to reconsider some things. The intent on waiting till the permits were actually obtained was to make sure that those agencies that have control over the design of the site and utilities over and above the township might not have something important to say that might add cost to the project as well. And so it was as part of that bond resolution, we kind of did an all-encompassing bond resolution that covered everything. When I attended the library board meeting at their last meeting, it was obvious that they were trying to get the project in the ground as soon as possible, and in doing so, they can't even let the contracts out and sign the contracts with the contractors until they have the bond money available. If we were to hold on the original bond resolution, that would put the construction off another couple months before they can even get started. And that then would propagate into wintertime construction, which would greatly increase the construction cost of the library, and I don't believe that that was the intent of any of the board members here. So there's a little caveat there. They're already over budget in their estimate based upon the construction costs that came in. So I think we need to help them as much as we can to keep their costs in control. The Road Commission for Oakland County typically deals with the widening of the roadways, the accel, decel lanes, the passing lanes, how that's going to be constructed, the geometrics of that, the location of all of that. And in talking with our township engineer, their meetings with the Road Commission have defined precisely what the size of those lanes would be, which propagates into the construction cost of that, depths of pavements, all of that's known. And so it's just fairly minor details that might have to be dealt with from the Road Commission in their permits. The other issue that I was concerned about with the Road Commission is the cost of the water main going underneath the road. There's a water main going underneath the road to the north and to the south in order to tie and make this loop, this water main loop. That's a very expensive operation to directionally drill, to jack and bore a 12-inch water main underneath a maiden roadway. It's my understanding from the Road Commission that that is done, that it's being proposed, and it was bid out exactly the way they want it to be, and so they do not perceive any, they don't expect any additional costs from that operation. My next concern was the MDEQ, and that was that's the agency who actually issues the construction permit for the water main. It's designed by an engineer, it's reviewed by an engineer, and then it's forwarded on to the state for the construction permit. Very rarely do they find any reason to deny that permit and to add any additional cost to that. And so even though it's going to take another 30 days, maybe 45 days to actually get the permit, maybe even 60 days to get the permit, I don't expect that there's going to be any additional costs that we would incur by waiting that long. So after reviewing this very, very carefully and understanding the intent, it's my recommendation to this board that we do in fact modify the original board resolution and remove the impediment of obtaining the permits versus having the permits applied for.
Application versus application, correct. Yeah. Okay. I think it was just the intention of the board at the time to make sure as many of the i's are dotted and t's were crossed and not to be an impediment, because we do not want to go into, there will be winter construction, but you want to try to be ahead of the devil as best you can.
Right.
And of course, right now, we're looking still at winter, and it's
exactly right.
It may be winter next month.
That's right.
Yeah. So they may start in winter. Okay, any other comments or questions from the board members? No? Okay.
To speak.
Mr. Roman.
So, in speaking with our municipal advisor, financial advisor, Benzinski and Associates, we're looking roughly at about a 6-week lead time from the time that we say go sell the bonds until the money actually comes in. And so this whole idea of this resolution was from our bonding attorney, Mr. Wygowski, who thought we might run into the situation that we are. I think, Mike, you did a great job explaining why we want to get the money sooner rather than later. McCarthy Smith is here as well. They're the construction managers, so if anyone had any questions for them, I know they were willing to answer. But I also support the resolution. That's all I had, Rick.
Okay, and it is very typical, again, for these permits to take some period of time. Any other members have any questions or comments before we go out there? Okay, that being said, I would like to entertain a resolution. Mr. Powell, would you like to entertain that resolution?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I move that the Township Board modify the original bond resolution by amending it by deleting Section 21, which specifically dealt with the requirement to obtain all permits prior to the selling of the bonds.
Very good. I have
I support that.
Resolution 18008. Thank you.
a motion.
Support.
We have support by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. There you go. Okay, resolution
Mr.
8.
Supervisor?
Yes, sir. I beg your pardon.
I'd like to get to the second
I'm
part
so
of that.
sorry. The second part, okay. This,
If you would.
No, I beg your pardon. You are correct, sir.
Just for the record, Mr. Supervisor, I had the opportunity to meet with the library today to go over a number of items. The estimate of cost that was given to me today, the latest update that appeared to have all of the items on there that at least I had some concerns about have been updated. And the additional cost over the 8.6 is indicated in the amount of $281,023. I have, in my meeting today, satisfied with the format of the billing that will be giving to the township for approval. I'm satisfied and would like to see the contracts and the insurance policies be made available no later than the pre-construction meeting. The additional insurance costs for the builder's risk have been included in the new sheet. The permits, as I see it, have been addressed by Sean and Aaron, which have satisfied my concern. Two items that really are a major concern to me is that I really kind of expected that the cost estimate for the library would come back at 8.6 million, but it would be my recommendation to address my concern that the library post with the treasurer the $281,032 at the time of receipt of the bonds. The other major concern that I have, and I'm not convinced about the insurance policy that has been supposedly addressed to take care of any additional cost overruns. Normally, we always would include at least a 5% contingency in this whole project cost. I guess I'm somewhat satisfied in the fact that the issue of additional cost have been addressed in our prior agreement that basically says and spells out that the library is responsible for all additional costs incurred over that. But it would be my recommendation, like I say, that the additional cost of the 281,032 be put up with the treasurer at the time of the receipt of the bonds to cover at least the estimated cost. I won't speak for the library, but in my discussions with Denise, I think they were somewhat agreeable that they would post those additional funds to move that. But that would address my concerns that I have, and that's why I asked just to have at least my concerns placed as part of the minutes of the meeting.
Absolutely. Denise, care to comment on that?
Yes, the library, in fact, library board has already approved a portion of their fund balance to the project, and we can use that money.
Okay, very good. Joe, you had your hand raised earlier, and I apologize because I did like this to get to you, but I think I answered what you were looking for during that conversation. So is there anything else you wanted to add?
I just want to thank the township experts for all the work they put in on looking at the permits and making sure that they didn't feel there would be any issues. So they were very confident, and I appreciate that.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Roman.
Just to address one of Terry's issues, which are contingencies in case there are cost overruns. The library and McCarthy and Smith have entered into an agreement in which the construction manager, McCarthy and Smith, actually guarantees that the contract sum shall not exceed the guaranteed maximum price set forth in the guaranteed maximum price amendment, as it could be amended from time to time. I'm reading your language, Bill, so you're looking at me.
It's a guaranteed maximum price. The project has an outside that price, there's a separate contingency fund to deal with owner requested or project change orders type issues. So that's outside of the GMP. On occasion, we could have put that GMP fund within our guaranteed maximum price. And then on some occasions, there's a shared savings clause. But we thought in keeping it straight and narrow, keep the funds outside. If and when there's an issue that's requiring contingency, it'll be processed through as a change order to the project. And then anything that's outside, that's not used, it's not inside the contract. It remains with the library board. And so that's how we set up this GMP. So if you're thinking it's all inclusive, it is for the project as defined today. And we've got a pretty good established project budget contingency for the project outside.
Very good. Okay, all set. All right, well, that was just informational at that point. Obviously, we've made our motion beforehand. I'm going to move on at this moment in time to item 8E. Oh, I beg your pardon. Mr. Pincinato.
Yeah. So we the voters approved $8.6 million for a new library. We also have these millages that we pay for existing operations in the existing library. How can you take money, over the 281 out of the existing fund balance and pay for something, the 8.6? We gave you $8.6 million. Live within that means. Why are we going over budget? I don't understand how.
That's a question for the
village money and use it towards the bond of a new building.
That would be a question for the library board, Pete. Okay, and at their format.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
I have a problem with this because it doesn't make.
Okay, moving along to item 8E, Resolution 18009, IT Service Agreement with Oakland County.
Are we going to address the issue of that money, or?
I would say we don't necessarily would have a resolution in place for that.
Okay.
That would just be discussion with the library that will have in the process.
Are we on item?
We are on item, yes.
In front of you is a resolution to approve the IT services agreement between Oakland County and the Township. This agreement might look familiar to you, and that's because you entered into it with the county a year and a half ago. What happens is the county has a standard agreement, and they have 12 optional exhibits that the township can choose to utilize as a service that's provided by the county. And when the township adopted or entered into the contract with the county a year and a half ago, it adopted exhibit, at the time, now it's called Exhibit 3, which is pay local taxes, Exhibit 8, which is OakNet connectivity, and Exhibit 10, which is Clemis. The assessing department has requested we add 3 exhibits for her department as well as other departments who utilize these services. That would be Exhibit 11, ArcGIS Online, Exhibit 12, Data Sharing, and Exhibit 13, Pictometry Licensed Products. When we contacted the county to just add those 3 exhibits, they indicated to us that since we entered into the original contract was modified and they wanted us to just readopt the whole thing all over again with all the exhibits we wanted. And we begged and we pleaded, just let us amend to add these exhibits, and they didn't let us. So the resolution in front of you is essentially adopting their agreement in the form that they want to use it, with the adoption, the inclusion of those 6 exhibits that the township department had indicated they wanted. The resolution in front of you authorizes the supervisor to execute this agreement as well as any ancillary agreements to effectuate this contract. It also authorizes the police chief, who has to sign the Clemis contract and complete some forms about payments and enhanced fee disbursements.
Questions?
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. Supervisor. Is there, in the use of any of these services, so by signing this, I understand that there's no cost to the township, but in the use of any of these services, are there costs to the township that will be billed to the township?
I believe there are some costs, but we basically cannot operate our system without the system. We don't really have a choice.
Okay, who in the township, do departments heads have the right to call the county and ask for services that would cost the township money?
They can make an inquiry on any service that they want to if there is a fee that is associated with it. I think on the let's take for example DPS. What's the GIS hookup?
We're not using any of these services for DPS other than
The one.
we do receive information, county base layer maps
Right.
from Oakland County.
Right.
They may be the same maps that they're offering for free with the ArcGIS Online. And a lot of that's probably the same maps that you were looking at today when we were discussing that on the phone. So that information has been paid for through other communities, including White Lake, the time when those were developed, and is now being offered, excuse me, for free. We elected to opt out of the CAMS program, which we had a 4-year contract with CAMS. But honestly, in the 4 years that we had CAMS, we've gotten more done in less than 6 months with our own GIS program. It's more expensive for us to do that, but we've got something that we can use that makes us more efficient and saves us money. So we elected to pull out of CAMS, which was part of this agreement. But I know Janine uses Pictometry. She uses ArcGIS Online. They use Pay Your Taxes, whatever they call that program. So, I mean, maybe you'd be.
There's no cost for Pictometry or ArcGIS Online. And actually, eventually, we may have a savings using ArcGIS Online, which is free through the county, instead of our own ArcGIS. Right now, we're going to keep both of them because they're different, but in the future, we may be able to get rid of a couple of our licenses.
The reason I ask that, obviously, we make a resolution such as this, and then hidden in the fine print is, oh, every time you call and ask for this, they send you a bill. Not unlike on page I think it's on page, well, I apologize, it says page 2, but obviously there's more than 2 pages in here. So it says crash report, they're $7 each, and so that's just one example.
That's an example of what that program looks like. That's not actually what the cost is.
So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you had a handle on it, and they all fall within our budgeted line items in the township.
But unfortunately, with this particular item, this is, we have no other alternative.
I understand.
Okay. So, we have no other system we can go to, we have no other vendor we can go to, we have no other service we can go to, the services that we have to get from the county.
Understand.
Okay.
Just FYI, Mike, so pay local taxes.
Yeah.
That's through the Treasurer's Department, and it allows our residents to pay property taxes via debit or credit card. Now, that's funded by user charges. The township doesn't pay. It's free to us. And the beauty to me is that it shifts a lot of the liability of taking credit card information away from the township and shifts that liability
To the county. So we're trying to do it as smart as possible, and this is an ever-changing, obviously I don't have to tell you about technology. It's
right.
Ever-changing.
Yep.
So, good questions.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board members? Okay. No. Go on.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 18-009 and allow public officials as needed to sign these documents.
I have a motion to approve. Looking for support?
Support.
Support from Mr. Ruggles. Thank you very much. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. Moving on to 9A, new business, request approval, MDEQ permit application to demolition Suburban Knolls Well House. Mr. Potter.
Yes, so DPS has a well house that we have not used since 2016. It's I believe, one of the original well houses that was a community well from Suburban Knolls, from who knows when. So it's we're currently capable of producing about 100 gallons a minute out of that site. So it's actually costing us money to operate it. It's in extremely bad condition. There's part of the design of these old well houses, they were all one room, and they use hypochlorite to disinfect well water, and hypochlorite without some vapor control is a very corrosive substance, and unfortunately it looks like the paint regimen wasn't quite adequate for this site. So
Just so I can stand it, currently that plant is offline.
that plant has been offline since September of 2016.
Yeah, it's been offline for quite a while, so we're not missing it out of our system. It's causing us no deficiency of any sort.
No.
And it also, think some of those wells, if I remember reading the report correctly, they had a little higher arsenic count.
They do.
Okay. So
They're not above the MCL for arsenic,
Right.
but this plant currently has no arsenic treatment. So we are required to do additional sampling for arsenic, and
which is an organic compound that shows up in water, but obviously, okay.
So we would like to ask the board's approval to move forward with the DEQ permit to demo this facility and abandon the 2 wells on this site.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So what's the process that follows? You get the permit and then you go to bids for a demo of this?
So first thing we would do would be get the permit. That allows the MDEQ to review our system overall and make judgments about firm capacity, decide if we can live without this plant, in their opinion. From then, we would move forward with an arsenic survey, asbestos survey, excuse me. And then from then, we would put together a contract and go out to bids. We expect the project demo to be somewhere around $80,000 to $90,000. I'm not expecting necessarily to be able to get this done this year, but the permit's good for 2 years, so I would like to, get going on the permit and, see if we can't start the process.
How big are those wells?
Very, very small.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. The larger of the two wells, I think, is a 6-inch, and it's broken down, needs a new pitless adapter. And the smaller of the two wells, I believe, is a 4-inch. And as I said, that's producing currently about 100 gallons a minute. So they're, as you can see from the photos, the plant's in very bad shape.
Yep.
Well, again, it's been offline, so.
Well, it's been offline, but we're still heating it. We're
Yeah,
still
exactly. Unnecessary
powering
expense.
it, and unfortunately, we still have to meet all the DEQ sampling requirements as long as it's connected to our system.
Very good. Any other questions from the board members? Mr. Clerk?
If we're going to move anywhere on this pump house, I'd really like to see us move in the direction that not only accomplish initially what Aaron wants to, but to maybe go further and get some bids on what it's going to take to remove that building from the property to make it marketable, so that we just don't have a partially abandoned product there, but something that we can put that property up for sale and recoup our fees and get them back into the waterfront.
I think Mr. Potter's budget does include the removal of the structure and the removal of the well casings down to about 20 or 30 feet?
Not quite that far.
Not quite that far? Okay. So,
10 feet, I think.
is it 10 feet?
Something like that.
Okay. That was deeper than that. Okay. All right, any other questions?
And I think Mr. Potter actually addressed that he has to go through some permitting processes before he can get the quotes. And I would highly suggest that you do it deeper than 10 feet. The footings for any residential home is going to be down 10, 12 feet, and you wouldn't want them to hit the top of that casing. So you got to grout it all the way up and then drop it down lower than that. I did have a suggestion. I talked to Mr. Potter earlier. If the township could at least touch base with the surrounding lakes. I think, I apologize, I'm drawing a blank. Oxbow Lake is to the east, or to the west of it.
West.
And there's another body of water just to the east of it. I've modified existing well house in the past and redefined it as a lake augmentation structure. And if they were having some elevation issues in the surrounding lakes, that could be redefined as a lake augmentation well house instead of a production well house. So that would save all the money of the demolition and really end up just dedicated to a homeowners association or a lake association. That is certainly one option, and I know that it was discussed in recouping the costs, but 80 to 90,000 is about the going price for a single-family residential lot, and so it'd be a wash even if we did have to demolish it. But I'd like to see it at least offered to the surrounding homeowners association to see if they could use it to
And
help
we
the
could look at
lakes.
some options. It's always an option.
Aaron, what is your input on that?
We willing to pursue anything. The only issue that I would foresee on that is, like I said, that it's currently not in a good operational state. Hasn't been for what appears to be, many years.
So there could be a considerable
There's going to be a considerable
investment.
cost to it.
That would be up to the homeowners association, certainly, yeah.
Well, something to consider.
Okay.
Okay, we had motion, or did we have motion? I beg your pardon. We didn't get a motion yet. Okay, so we're looking,
I'll make a motion to move forward with the MDEQ permit application to demo the suburban Knowles well house, and also to abandon the 2 existing wells on that site.
we have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
Motion support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving on, new business. Item B, request approval for Dublin Senior Center painting quote. There was 2 quotes that were submitted. There were from Kathy Gordonier. She has brought forth last month with the replacement of the carpet, which the board approved, the carpet replacement program, and upon doing a walkthrough of that facility, it's noted that it's been over 10 years since it was painted, and there are several areas in that building that need attention. It didn't make any sense to try to do a paint job over new carpet. So, not in my eyes. So it was decided to take a look at it and see what could be done. She solicited multiple parties, of which only 2 of them responded. And the RTJ's Handiworks is at $5,200, and Mr. Jeff Shimp Painting at $5,700. He just coincidentally was the same contractor that painted the building. I think I think about 10 or 12 years ago. I can't remember exactly when it was done. And she knows his work. He did what appears to be a good job, and it's held up for some period of time. And she has expressed her interest to have Mr. Shimp take this contract over the other individual, which she has no history with that person, nor knows really what their work is other than just through the referral program. Any questions? Mr.
Yeah.
Reynolds?
I wonder if you know, are these White Lake companies?
Mr. Shimp is, yes. Yes.
That's preferable, right?
Yep.
For the board?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to point out a couple things. First of all, I don't think that Ms. Gordonier followed our procurement process. It would be to advertise, solicit bids, have a closed bid operation, and then order those and select from the lowest bidder. In talking to Kathy today, she let me know exactly what you just said. I'm not particularly convinced that it's legitimate to spend $500 more on a contractor because you like them. You certainly do not choose the low contractor if it's shown that they are not qualified. And so I have a little bit of a problem arbitrarily spending $500 more on somebody that she knows versus the contractor who she had no idea whether he was good or not, just because she knows the other contractor. So I don't think that that's a legitimate reason to spend $500
I think
more.
I understand your concern, but I think she has a past track record with this individual. It's not that she knows him per se. He's already done work for the township.
Okay, when you go out for bids, however, because you've worked with somebody else doesn't mean that the low bidder isn't qualified. And you have to show that it's not qualified, not to accept a bidder just because you've used them in the past.
Sorry, I'm just telling her to take a lesson, okay?
Yeah, take now, something that was just brought up, both contractors use Sherwin-Williams paints. They both are going to do 2 coats of paint. I called each contractor, and they appear to both be qualified to do the work. RTJ's is in Heartland, a local company. Mr. Jeff Shimp is in fact a White Lake resident and a White Lake business. So there's certainly some value in having a White Lake contractor. So that is where I'm wrestling with the $500 for a White Lake contractor or the low bid. And so I just wanted the board to know what I found out during my investigation today.
Understood. Thank you very much for the input. Any other questions from the board members?
I don't have a question, but what are you proposing? You just wanted to make a statement, or would you
Oh, I was going to sit back and let you guys decide.
would you like it, the bids to be redone, or what
No,
were you
that won't work.
proposing?
They're planning on doing this painting the end of
There's no
April and
time.
beginning of May.
Okay.
So there isn't time to do that. So we have what we have here, and we're just being asked to make a wise decision, that's all.
Which is one of the reasons she had a very small window to try to gather. And the current trade situation is as such that if you call someone today for something, you'll be lucky if you get them out and
You bet.
if they even call you back.
There's no deadline in my letter, so what was it that she was hoping to have it done by?
She needs to start. She needs to start April 26th and hopefully be done May 4th.
Okay.
And then the carpet's scheduled right in after that, and they have a small window too to install the carpet.
correct.
So, and then there's a variety of social programs that she has. Different things going on. I see an arm.
Are the bidders using the same quality Sherwin-Williams, because they have different levels?
Correct.
of
I can't specifically answer that, but I know the integrity of the one painter. I'm not saying that the other person, I'm not saying anything derogatory against the
Well, I
other
was just
person.
wondering, you know,
But I do know
the
the
difference.
the credibility. You are very correct. There are several grades. I know that because there was satisfaction of the work that was performed in the past, that she would like to do that. I am also very much with Mr. Ruggles. If it's a White Lake business and they are paying taxes here, they're trying to make their livelihood here, and they're not worlds apart. And I also know that if something arises, he's not going to nickel and dime us for every additional drywall patch or little things that are going to come up along the way, because that's just not how he operates. So I am extremely comfortable with awarding this contract to Mr. Jeff Shimp, painting. Anyone else? Mr. Lilly.
I just want to go on record sharing my same concerns that Mr. Paul has expressed.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Rome?
I as well want to go on record with the same concerns. I'm actually not going to support the higher bid, just so the rest of the board knows.
Okay, very good. Anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make the motion because I absolutely support local White Lake businesses. I make a motion to support Jeff Shrimp Painting with the dollar amount of $5,700 for the painting at the Dublin Community Center.
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed $500.
I have a motion.
$5,700.
Looking for support.
Support.
I have a motion, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
2 noes.
Are two opposed?
2 noes.
All right.
Opposed.
Jerry and Mike.
Oh.
Thank you very much. Okay. Moving along, item 9C, request approval of legal service billing rate increase. Are you the low bidder?
I have been for the last 5 years.
We have before us a request from Foster Swift to, well, let me back up. Back in June of 2013, we were able to have Foster Swift come on board through some shuffling of staff and finding Lisa and bringing her back to the fold. At the satisfaction of not only township offices, but also very much at the satisfaction of the police department and their prosecution division. And you would concur, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And at that time, she proposed a rate to the township of a very competitive $125 per hour for 2 years. That was 2013. We are now 5 years later, and the request is to go from 125 to 140. Comparably speaking with other municipalities, this is in line, and it is actually less expensive than some neighboring communities.
I will add, though, before you hired Foster Swift in 2013, the township was paying, for a long time, $130.
Mhm.
So really, if you're looking at before Foster Swift came on, it's really a $10 increase, but it's $15 since
That's
2013
a less than 10% increase
in 5 years.
in 5 years. So I'm very comfortable with this. I am satisfied with Lisa's performance and the performance of Foster Swift through all of the inquiries that we've had on a variety of different matters. They seem to be extremely responsive and accepted board meetings at 7 o'clock at night. And that's not her. I'm just teasing you. You know, I got to take a shot when I can get one, you know. So
I'd just like to add
Yes.
That this does not affect the rates for prosecutions, which are unchanged, as well as the rates for litigation, which is unchanged. This would just be the general municipal stuff that Rick is very, not been giving a whole lot to me, so it really wouldn't make a whole lot. Rick's been keeping a lot of that.
So,
And this rate would be for all the attorneys, obviously, at Foster Swift, so not just my services, but anybody that's called in. That
Right.
you might not know, but the officials do call a lot of the other attorneys at my firm. For example, Ben Price, who's a real estate attorney, they work directly with Ben. We have an environmental attorney. When issues come up, they go directly to that attorney. We have different specialties, and so you get the advantage of all that experience with attorneys who bill out $300+ an hour at the municipal rate that you're locked into.
We're very fortunate in the past, and we've had a need. We've been able to perform to the public's requirements and needs very cost effectively. So I would like to, any other questions from the board? Yes?
I just like to state that we went with Foster Swift because of their diversity of attorneys that they have, and it would really be unfair to simply put together a listing of what our expenses over the last maybe 10 years have been, even though that our rates of the amount of money that we've spent for legal services is far more than what we did pay before. The need for those services have actually justified why that was there, not simply we're spending more money. So,
agreed.
State that.
Agreed, very much so. Anyone else? Okay, with that, I'd like to make a motion.
I actually do have one quick question. Will this be indefinite, or will we be revisiting this later, or what would be the time frame on this?
I didn't put it
indefinitely.
Yeah, I didn't put a time frame on here. I don't anticipate coming back in the next 3, 4.
Three. I'm just curious because the first one was given a time frame and to revisit. So would this be revisited, or this?
I have no problem locking it in for the 2 years like I did last time. I don't expect that's going to be an issue. It's taken me this long to come and ask for more money. I mean, I enjoy working with the township. I mean, we all kind of have grown together, and I think that I don't anticipate coming back to you in the next 3 years. If you want that locked in, I don't have a problem with that. But remember, I mean, you could fire me anytime. This isn't really a contract. So.
This is at will.
So she's offered to lock that rate in. So I think we shall.
For 3 years, you said?
For 3 years, you
Let's
said?
do 2, like we did last time.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adjust the fees as requested per Foster Swift for a period of 2 years to $140 per hour on affected services.
I'll support your motion.
Motion and support, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, great. 9D, first reading fee ordinance amendments, ordinance 129.
The fee ordinance, as you know, is modified at the direction of each department head. This was prepared by the clerk's office after sending out an email to all your department heads saying, if you have any amendments to the fee ordinance, speak now or forever hold your peace, or at least until the next time this is amended. The red lines show all the requested revisions to the fee ordinance.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Aaron answered a couple of my other questions, but on page 12 and the fee ordinance, there is a debt service fee. Now, I know that we paid off our Phase 1 sanitary sewer debt service already, and I didn't know why that debt service fee might still be on there at $18 a quarter.
I can answer that question for you.
Page 12.
So
That's pretty easy.
Until the general fund is reimbursed in full, that debt service fee stays in place.
So we don't owe anything to another agent, or we don't owe on the bonds,
Just need to correct those funds.
but the transfer of funds need to be put back into the general.
Transfer of funds,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
So, any other questions?
I have one change, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes, sir.
Amy, if you can add this to section 30.
What page?
G of the fee ordinance, which is on page 15. Dog license fees. Under 30G, A, B, C, D, and F increase all of those fees by $3 each. And it wasn't the township that increased those fees, it was Oakland County Animal Control.
Really? Okay.
Terry, this is a first reading, isn't it?
First reading, yes.
So will you let Kathy know so she publishes the correct version?
Thank you.
Will you let Terry know?
It's, and just one quick correction, it's page 16, not 15. Right?
Page,
Like 16 on my.
page 16, yeah.
Thanks, Liz. Page
Page
16.
Spay, neuter, not spayed. So it's add $3 to each one of those categories?
A, B, C, D, and F.
A, B, C, D, and F. Better get my dog license.
Yeah, no
Too late, the fees are already up.
kidding. Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
Can't get away with anything.
Just every one of these?
No, I did the same thing. It's wrong. Liz corrected us. It's over here.
Page
Spay,
16.
neuter, this, anyone's on this page. Page 16. I'm looking at maps
So
and
it's
charts.
G, it's G, A, B, C, D.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
G.
Got it.
He said G, but just wrong page.
This was mandated by the county, so you said?
That's what it
Correct. And again, Mr. Powell, no choice in the matter.
I hear you.
So, I don't know why cats aren't licensed. I still haven't gotten anybody to explain that to me yet, but we won't go there. I'm a cat lover.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
So, but I just don't know what that's all about. Okay, so any other questions on that or any notes that need to be made? Looking for a motion.
I'm not sure what you need. First reading.
Just a motion to pass on,
Move to
move to second reading.
Okay, motion to move the fee ordinance amendments to second reading,
As amended?
as
To-
amended.
To second.
I'll support that.
We have motions and we have support by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on. 9E, request approval for fireman recruitment officer employment contract. Chief, podium is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you, Board, for hearing my request. The request goes forward because, well, we are reapplying for that grant that we got originally that paid for 4 years of our recruiting and training coordinator. I'm trying to be proactive, and I want to make sure that I can continue this position forward should the grant not go through. I won't know for a few months minimum whether the grant, has been accepted or not, but I wanted to make sure that I could continue on with this position and with this employee. And it really started before I was hired on 4 years ago when the department recognized that some of our employees that were trying to wear all these different hats weren't really doing as good of a job as needed to be done in White Lake. And with us now having, approaching 40 paid on-call employees and 18 career employees, what's happened is our recruiting and training coordinator has taken on a lot of duties that I've assigned him. In fact, I have 3 pages full of things that he's responsible for, not only the recruiting, the training, and the retention aspect of it, but also he's our EMS coordinator. And I mean, I can go through a lot of things in here that is required of us being a transporting BLS agency. There's a lot of things that we're expected to do and maintain, being an EMS agency, along with being a fire department. We have a host of training requirements that we have to meet, including some upcoming requirements that are being discussed for the future. So one area is that the Firefighter Training Council will probably by July will increase the annual firefighter continuing education requirement, which is going to be 8 to 10 hours required in 10 different categories. And again, we're trying to be proactive with this position and making sure that we're going to be able to meet all these requirements for training our employees. So just this new requirement alone is going to consist of 11 total classes. 7 of the classes are 16 hours in length, 2 being 24 hours and 2 are 40-hour classes. They'll have to be presented in the evenings and on the weekends to accommodate the paid on-call division schedules, because most of those members work Monday through Friday. They'll be needed to be presented more than once to accommodate new members as they were added. And the new law is stating that all the members of our department must have this training within 3 years of their initial employment date. So we have a little bit of time, to achieve that. To present these classes, the instructor has to be a state certified firefighter instructor and has to have attended those classes already to present. I know our recruiter is a state certified fire instructor. He also is degreed. He's a former battalion chief for Pontiac, and he has a lot of connections with the state and with Oakland County Medical Control, which also helps us in making sure that we follow all the protocols and all the quality assurance programs that we're participating in. We also participate in some new programs. Right now we're doing something related to epinephrine drawing and use on patients. But if I'm allowed to go on a little bit more with what his typical duties are, we have quarterly mandatory reviews of county and state SOPs that each member has to complete and review either in live training or on a county website. We have quarterly reports that have to be done for quality assurance with documentation that all our members have completed the training. There's additional quarterly training for our department that we have to report to Oakland County Medical Control. There are training meetings and things that our EMS coordinator has to attend, and that is Mr. Holland, our recruiter. We have used him as our liaison between the administration and the career division, between the career and the paid on-call division. So his duties include scheduling part-time shifts for the paid on-call FEOs. That's our fire engine operators. They're our most highly trained paid on-call members. And in fact, you had heard Mr. Leiker speak earlier. He's one of our FEOs, one of our really highly trained members that are available to do shift work, part-time shift work, to help us try to staff stations. He also arranges testing for paid on-call members. He arranges all the training programs and things that our members can attend. He brings in outside instructors to our apartment. He has taken on our tasks of ordering our basic equipment, including some of our personal protective clothing and gear that we use. Our paid on-call membership, since it's fairly large, and we do recruit and hire different sizes of individuals, we're constantly reusing gear, reallocating it, ordering it, and so our recruiter and training coordinator is also in charge of that. He does, when he does his actual recruiting duties, which he does, he attends a lot of community and school events where he can recruit, speak, local job and career fairs that he attends. He also acts as our, if you will, our secretary at our headquarters station. Years ago, we had a fire secretary that sat in that front office section. She is now working here in this building, and so what we have the recruiter do, since he sits in that office, we have him act as a greeter when somebody comes in. He will sign for our packages. He does a number of other duties for us by being in that position. He's kind of the face that the public will see when they first walk in. And being, again, a retired battalion chief, he has a good demeanor with the public. So, I mean, there's a lot of other things I could go into that he does for us. And the reason I'd like to have this continue, and that's if we don't get the grant. You know, if we get the grant, his position will be paid for 4 years into the future. But I've kind of assembled my management team on the fire department, and part of one of the integral components of it is to have a recruitment and training coordinator there to do a lot of these things that keep the department running as smooth as we can run it. And prior to him being there, there was a lot more issues. I can't say that we don't have any issues that pop up at the fire department, and managing all these employees. A lot of these are members that are willing to take a lot of risks and to be in very uncomfortable and dangerous situations. Just like the police department is. And so we do have different personalities, and we do try to accommodate people when they have concerns and when they have issues. And so it's very important that we have somebody that can be the point person to address a lot of these issues and try to work things out, make the department run as smooth as we can. Because as you know, we are running a combination department. It's a paid-on-call department along with a career full-time division. And in order to do this and try to mesh these groups as best as we can, it does take some constant work and attention. And, like I say, do we sometimes fall short of the mark? Yes, we do, but we're always trying to improve, and we want to keep those groups working as well as we can, together. But keeping in mind, there's 2 separate unions there too. So we have to work with each union to be able to achieve, the overall goals that the organization wants to achieve.
Very good. Questions for the board, for the chief? Mr. Ruggles?
Did you mention are all the grant funds used up, or when will they be used up?
Yeah, the grant funds we calculate probably in June sometime they'll be completely used up.
Can I interject for just 1 second?
Please
Because
do.
I spoke with the grant coordinator at FEMA. The performance period actually ends May 3rd of 18, which means that any expenses out of our pocket after May 3rd are not reimbursable.
Okay. Do you have any idea when you might hear on if you get awarded the next grant?
Well, we're hoping to hear within a few months. I wish I could give you an exact time frame, but these grants come from all, these applications come from all around the country, and they're looked at and they're vetted out and they move to different levels. And the one thing we probably will find out is if we get bumped out of the system, we'll probably find out fairly quickly, because the longer you don't hear anything means it's more likely good news that you're moving through that system.
Okay.
Mr. Powell?
Thank you, Chief, for letting us know what he does other than just training and recruitment. I was curious, you didn't mention the hours worked. What's his typical week hours?
Well, he's putting in usually about 48 hours or so to be able to perform all that.
A 5-day a week, or is that a 3-day a week?
Well, he's here 5 days a week, but he also comes in, on evenings for drills and different training things, different evenings that, he commits, or sometimes weekends to go to some of the special events. And he's been very, very flexible in being able to do that. For us. And, when we did interview this individual along with several others, he was head and shoulders above the rest as far as his qualifications. And he's really proven himself over the years in what he's done for us, I believe.
All right, and then I didn't know, as part of the grant position in the past 4 years, does the grant allow him to have included the fringe benefits that you have here? Do we still treat him as a township employee even though he's being paid for by a grant?
Yeah, when he was here, they included in that was a fringe benefit package that he was able to get, and in fact, I think that's that's one important aspect for that particular employee, that he's able to get that health care piece that comes with that, that package. And continuing forward, really, we're just asking to bring him on level with other township employees as far as his benefit package. There's nothing there additional in that part of it that we're asking for.
All right, and then the last question I had was, the recommended salary, is that part of budgeted funds in your line item budget?
Yes, it is, absolutely. Also, I would remind the board that in his contract, he is an at-will employee, and that for whatever reason, if you take a look in there, that, he could be given notice and, released. And of course, I would hope that, there would be some due cause for that.
Right. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Roman?
Chief, I can't remember, were you here when Harvey Holland started?
Yes.
Were you? Yes, it was right when the
Oh,
transition.
okay, so that would have been right around April of 2014?
Yeah, that's correct. In fact, I did interview him along with several other candidates to fill that position.
Okay, so I guess if for any reason this board does not approve him staying on, what is your plan B? Do you have a game plan as to how you would redelegate all of the duties that he's taken on?
Well, first of all, I would say, he's very highly qualified, and in order to do this, I would certainly need some time to try to implement something that I could try to push that all back out again, which I may be putting requirements on employees that I would not select to do particular roles. To give you an example, if you want to send somebody out to a school to talk about fire safety to kids, you kind of look over your group, and you got to get somebody that not only is trained in giving that type of information out, but that you think would be a good fit to go out there in the public and do that. And so I think, in the past, although different duties were accomplished by our staff and our firefighters, I think that to have this, professional person in that position, I think it would be very difficult to go back and try to put this all back on our personnel. And I think even in the 4 years, getting busier and busier with calls and going on calls, they're primarily there, on standby to service the public and kind of rush to the scene to give emergency aid or, fight the fire. And more, it's moving toward, that kind of a scenario where they're, yes, they have special duties, other duties that they accomplish, but to get all this done in, between 3 shifts, I'd have to assign 3 different EMS coordinators, because these shifts that work 24 hours, they work about 10 days a month. So I can't have one person, I can't pay them overtime to come in on all these other days. I'd have to assign 3 members, 1 from each shift, and to have this consistency with something like EMS coordination.
Is that what we used to do then? We had 3 different people?
Well, we had at least 2 different people working on that, that component of it together. And, I guess frankly, when I came in and I heard some of the concerns from some of the paid on call folks, I wasn't convinced that we were meeting what we needed to meet with especially with our paid on call group, by not having somebody that was really dedicated to working with that group and being a liaison for that group. And we have Jim Leiker is here still, our FEO. For example, when Jim needed some turnout gear, his other gear had kind of worn out, he was able to come in, speak with our liaison, with Mr. Holland. Mr. Holland could arrange him to be measured up for his gear, purchase the gear, get everything taken care of. In the past, different things like that would fall through the cracks and take a long time. Maybe issues weren't being addressed that should have been in a more timely fashion. And so I think that, I don't want to take a step backwards with trying to delegate this all out. I want to keep moving forward and having this professional in this position to do these tasks.
I just remember when we actually approved the position, it was set to be a 4-year term, based on the grant.
Yes.
I've gone over and talked to some of the full-time guys from time to time, and I probably don't get over there enough.
Yeah.
Isn't there a significant amount of downtime for them where they're waiting for calls?
Well,
where they could actually take on some of these other responsibilities?
Well, they they do have downtime. There's no doubt about it. But they do have other special duties that they do accomplish and that they're responsible for. For example, we have a captain that takes care of, Captain Lilly takes care of all our apparatus. And it's a very, time-consuming job to, schedule all the maintenance and the repairs. And, if something breaks down on another unit, they can send him an email and he'll start arranging some things, or he might direct that officer to do some things. So I think, yes, they do have downtime. Do I think that that it would be a good idea to try to put all this back on them and to try to, for example, to try to go recruit? Remember, they're on standby for emergency calls. So if I send them to a school or a job fair or something to, start some recruiting operation, and they're talking to somebody and the alarm goes off, of course they would have to leave. And, I would really love to be able to do more of that with this group, but just keeping in mind that some days we only have, 3 to 4 personnel on duty. To take them and put them in these different roles is really not going to work with being available for emergency calls.
Mr. Powell.
How would this position, or would this position assist in manning the third station?
Well, if I could speak on that, he is our recruiter, and he has been tasked with recruiting more FEOs. Okay, that's the fire engine operators. These are the highly trained, paid-on-call or part-time members that can work shift work. So right now, I have $125,000 in the budget for part-time shift work that is right now available to FEOs. So right now, Mr. Liker here is available to, if he wants to avail himself and work these shifts, which are 8, 12, or 16-hour shifts, he could join on and help possibly staff stations on days when we're allowed to by the union contract to add some personnel in the station. So am I utilizing that budget the way I want? No, and you know why? It's because of participation. And I'm not saying that, Mr. Liker here is not doing his share. I mean, he does work for another fire department, and he's very busy with what he does there, and he's very dedicated to what he does here also. But I am using Harvey Holland, our recruiter, to try to get more individuals and to motivate them to get the training so they can enter our system of working these part-time shifts. And so most recently, our firefighter of the year, a young guy named Jacob Bearden, has just completed his FEO, and with a little more encouragement, he's been now starting to work some shift work, some part-time shift work. And that's where we're moving toward, and that's what I'd like to see as one way to start solving this issue. I can't do it overnight. This issue's been around for decades. We have 3 separate fire stations. However, most of the time, 2 of them are staffed, but the 3rd one isn't. Now, on some days, we do have private ambulance EMTs that are there, but not all the time. They're there sporadically. And then the days when we can get our additional staffing through our program, then we could open up that station. And we have been diligently working toward doing that. I have budget money set aside that I did vow and pledge to try to do that with this last millage, and I've been working to try to accomplish that. I wish I could say that it was, 100% success, and that, I have a whole bunch of these FEO, paid-on-call members that signed up and are working these shifts. But I have a smaller group that are, select group that are doing it.
Thank you.
Mr. Roman.
Chief, as far as the recruiting piece of it,
Yeah.
like, can you explain to us a little bit about what he does to recruit, how long it takes? I mean, does he use a Facebook page? How does he recruit? And is that something that, like, maybe Sharon could help out with?
Yeah, well, it's something that, he does. He gets out in the community when he can and where he can. He does a lot of networking, even with the people that he brings in to try to see if there's other people in their circle and their net that he can, have. I mean, he definitely gave me a kind of a list of some of the things that he does when he's recruiting. And I can just share those with you here. Let's see. So he goes to those community and school events. He goes to any job and career fairs that he's able to. He has. We do put out on our website here at the township contact information, and he does follow up on the calls that come in, email, walk-in inquiries, telephone. He also coordinates all the testing and the interview and the orientation process. So when we bring on this, kind of, sometimes you might say cold turkey person, just that wants to, be a paid-on-call firefighter, and they want to, serve the public, and hey, we love that attitude, but we're going to have to make sure that they have some basic things that they can probably function in our environment, and then we do some testing, just some basic physical agility things that they need to do, and then we try to give them an orientation, and then we send them on to training. So we can't just take somebody who has no training and put them out there on the fire ground or on an ambulance. So he arranges all that training for the new members, including participating with other departments in the EMS and the fire academy. He also does some teaching with one of the fire academies, which saves us some money in that our members then aren't charged the full fees because he's a participant instructor in that fire academy. And he's really the kind of the point of contact for, all those members and especially the new members when they have questions, problems. And he also stays on top of what's happening kind of in their lives, because they have other jobs and they have families and they have their own set of circumstances that sometimes come into their life, and then he keeps in touch with them that way, so we know what's happening, and hey, maybe they missed a drill or they haven't been going to some calls, and we can find out more of, well, why might that be occurring.
Very good. Any other questions? Ms. Smith?
I don't have any questions for you tonight, Chief, because you and I had an in-depth conversation about this, and I feel confident in that conversation. But I did jot down a couple notes. I just wanted to state publicly that that you have 100% of my support when you tell me you need something to keep our residents safe. And I want everyone else to know that as well. The safety of our residents and our firemen are ultimate to me. So when you come to me and you tell me you need it, I want you to know that you have my support. I do believe that you are responsible in budgeting for this ahead of time if the grant does not come through. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And I do believe that Harvey Holland is an asset to our department, and he is a mentor to many firemen in the department. And if you tell me that you need him, I trust you, just as I trust Chief Keller to do a great job. And I'm forever grateful for our firemen and the job they do and serve our residents. So thank you. Thank you to the firemen that attended this evening. And so I don't have any questions for you, but I do just want everyone to know that if you think you need this and it's important to better serve our residents, then I hear you loud and clear, and I support you.
Well, thank you, and I absolutely do feel we need this position.
Thank you.
Mr. Lilly?
I just, my input is that we hired a gentleman based on a grant, and the chief said And the department has had opportunities to get this grant moving forward. I think what really tells the story, though, is to go back to the original application of what the success of this program was going to bring about in the period of 4 years. And I haven't seen this the first time that I can remember in 4 years that we've even had a discussion about the 4-year grant position. So I would like to see an evaluation of the program. If we're talking about hiring additional full-time firefighters, and that's one thing. But like I say, this particular program was set up to accomplish certain things. There's milestones that needed to be reached, and I would like to see us time to evaluate this program based on more of a factual basis than what's being told tonight. So I'm kind of leaning towards the point that if the grant has expired, then we need to, in order to move forward, to have the grant renewed and move forward like that. But if we're talking about taking on additional people, I think the board needs to seriously consider, and that was one of the points that have been brought up as far as the manning of the stations and that type of thing that I haven't seen happen. We've talked about it for several years now. So like I say, I'd like to see a complete evaluation of this thing before we move forward, so that we're talking about facts and the direction that this board is confident that it's moving towards that goal.
Very good.
Mr. Supervisor, if
Yes,
I may, I
yes,
wasn't
ma'am.
privy to those conversations in establishing the grant 4 years ago. So was there some kind of a evaluation process discussed at that time, or how was that part of the grant?
There is a certain criteria or objectives that the criteria of the grant would, this individual would provide for us. And myself also, you know, it has, I couldn't believe it's been 4 years already. I mean, I don't even know where that went. I caught myself and I just couldn't realize it just blew by. But in that 4-year period, I mean, you know, what was accomplished with this program? You know, I, as a supervisor for the last year and a few months here, I have not seen any written documentation brought forth to me with an update, an annual update, or anything on this particular program. So I have to agree with Terry. It'd be nice to see exactly have a written report as to what all this has, how it's benefited the department. This sounds like there's a lot of things that have, but up until this meeting, I really haven't had a lot of knowledge of this. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that when I look at this as a grant position, it was just that. As a trustee, I remember voting on that. It was a grant position. It's 4 years, starts, ends, done. Okay? If we have money out there, I'm going back to one of the things that I said in one of the very first meetings that we talked. I want station number 3 open. It's been too damn long that number 3 is not open. Okay? I don't care what the hell has to be done. I want number 3 open. So if we have to have, in lieu of this gentleman, we take that money and put that towards another firefighter, as I have requested that be considered in the past, that it should be considered. The safety of these residents is paramount. I understand we need to have training personnel. I understand it can kind of put you in a little bit of a paradox situation, and I don't envy that situation. But on the other hand, I don't want it to explain to someone at some point in time where someone's going to be beating on number 3 door because somebody either got hit out in front of her, something happens within close proximity, and the public goes there for help. You know what? If it's not going to do any good, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tear that damn thing down, okay? Because it's useless, okay? I appreciate STAR's support and their help on occasion when things have happened over there. But I firmly believe that we need to get our act together within our department and get number 3 manned, okay? I'm not done, Chief. I'm on a roll.
All right, yeah.
So it's super important. I am looking at this position as an important position. Everything that you have divulged to us today tells me that it is an important position. And there are a lot of little nuances to the fire service that I don't know about. I'm not a fireman, okay? And I don't know all the nuts and bolts. So I can only talk to the public and hear what they have to say, and I can only talk to some of the firefighters independently and kind of draw from the well of knowledge that they have, because they all have a lot to give. And there are none of them that think any less of our department. They all love our department and our community, so they all want to see it move forward. But we have to do that first and foremost. I would much rather see this money that you've got in your budget go again towards another firefighter to help solve that problem. This is kind of a perplexing dilemma. The more people you have, the more attention you have. This is a complex business. There's a lot of details to all this information, and I'm not going to pretend to know it. Life-saving is a very tricky business, and we don't want to deprive any of our staff, fire staff, of any of that knowledge or any of that training. So that's extremely important on this hand. So this carries all this weight over here. But on the other hand, if I need extra people to keep a station open, you've got to come up with that somehow. So if we've got budget for that, I'd rather see this. I would be more in favor of extending this for a period of time to see where we stand with this grant process, and hopefully with a little bit of lady luck and draw a little fire, we'll do it. But I'm entertaining that in my mind's eye, because I think there has to be a beginning and an end. Now, if this does twofold: A, if we get the grant, then we get the grant and all is well. B, if we don't get the grant, it gives you a transition period to come up with an alternate plan as to how you're going to revitalize your staff and put them into positions of authority. The other thing that kind of bothers me is that you need to have, you should have an alternate trainer anyway. So I'm just going to use that term as a recruiter trainer. Harvey's a great guy, but what if he steps out and gets hit by a bus?
Mhm.
What do you do tomorrow?
Well, I do have one other individual that, is an IC right now. And of course, with him doing shift work, he's not going to be there every day. And I would, again, pay him overtime to come in, if he was willing to do that on the other shifts. Now, what I'd just like to add is that in my forecast, and we're going to have our millage meeting coming up. If you look at the 4-year forecasting that I've done, I've included actually an additional firefighter in there, along with keeping this recruiting and training coordinator in there also. But keep in mind too that I have funds that I'm wanting to utilize on part-time staffing that I'm unable to fully utilize because of the staff that's not available. So Mr. Holland is a key person to help get more individuals interested, trained, et cetera, to work some more of those shifts. He's just part of that process of doing part-time shifts.
So, Mr. Supervisor, if I may, that's how I understood it, that this wasn't an either or, that it wasn't have Mr. Holland and not be able to hire another fireman or staff Station 3. I understood it as he is a tool to help staff, 3 or additional staff, correct? It's not an either or, you have budget for both.
I have budget for both.
Okay.
But I have to say, adding an additional firefighter, or even if I added 2 firefighters, I still need more to be able to fully staff that station. And so hence trying to use our paid on call ranks, trying to do something with part-time staffing, to be able to do that. And that's kind of what
I don't
we're
envy
working
your
on.
position, Chief, and I know there's a lot of challenges, and again, I'm not going to pretend to know them.
But keeping Harvey doesn't hinder.
But I do know that we need to come up with a resolve, and I don't think there's an easy answer for this particular.
I guess my question is exactly what I apologize, Rick. Chief, are you telling us that hiring this person will have no beneficial or negative impact on manning Station 3?
No, I'm saying that it's going to have a positive effect. I'm trying to continue the program, which is increase the number of part-time staffing that's able to be trained and fill in those part-time shifts.
Is he qualified to take any of the shifts in Station 3?
Oh, he tells me he'd like to. You know, he would like to, but yeah, I mean, you know, we've batted around some other options over the years. Some of them are kind of steps backwards, and so, you know, we haven't really come across some of those ideas as necessarily solutions moving forward.
And he's a civilian, right? So this is basically a civilian position.
He's a civilian, yeah, that's correct, and so he's in a unique position.
So you're talking about hiring just a civilian position. This is not anybody that can contribute to manning Station 3.
No, and like I mean, he would like to, but that wasn't the intent, you know, to do that.
I mean, I remember 4 years ago, but I remember it, you know, Jason Creed applied for the grant, got the grant. And I remember very well that it was my sentiment and some of the board members that this was for 4 years. Because it always seems that you bring them in and then a sneaky suspicion that they got to stay. You know, it's just going to happen. So it was definitely, I thought, understood that he was here for 4 years, you know. And it would be my position that if we're going to hire somebody full-time, I'd rather have a fireman. You know, let's have a full-time, let's bring in 2 of them, you know. All those responsibilities that you listed off existed prior to him. And they're going to go on without him. Maybe we need a temporary period of time that he can stay on so that it can be transitioned off. But I'm not even sure if there's more on-call firemen responding to the calls these days, even though there's more of them, you know. So that would be my take on the situation.
Can we table this till next month? Does that affect your grant deadline, Chief? Can we table this at all to get some evaluations and maybe some input that would make the my colleagues feel a bit more comfortable with some of their questions today? And would that help you if you had an evaluation that Terry?
Well, that tabling is definitely a possibility, although I think I'm a little more in favor of granting some sort of a permanent extension that gives them a deadline. And if we have a rough idea as to about when we think a response time would be for this grant, it would give us an opportunity to gather more information, get a better and more detailed report, see what we actually, all the goals and things that we've hit, understand where we're at and what the effect is going to be. With and or without him, and if we do get the grant, then this is a moot point. So, but again, I don't mean to put this on you, Chief, but
yeah,
number 3.
Well, would you entertain a 6-month extension, which I would think would be kind of the minimum amount of time I would need to transition all that?
Transition?
Even though that's not what I'm in favor of, nor my position.
Mr. Powell.
I have a logistical question, or maybe a political question, in that when you apply for a grant and a community says that we're going to hire this person whether the grant comes in or not, then the grant people say, well, we're not helping them at all because they've already established the fact that they're going to have a grant. So if we did that, we should do it for 3 months on the stipulation that the grant is in fact accepted, so that they know that he is not going to continue if the grant isn't accepted.
Correct. Yeah, I wrote down here 90-day extension. Yeah.
When will we know the grant is approved?
Yeah, I don't think we'd know for sure, but I don't think it would be any time sooner than that, than that 90 days.
Anything else? Any comments?
So you submitted the grant, what date?
Well, the actual deadline is the 28th of this month, so it's actually going in this month. You know, that's how it works. So.
I personally would like to have the chief modify the grant application and say, this position will in fact end if the grant is not accepted.
You just change that to 90 days.
Yeah.
You want to make it a motion?
Well, I don't know if we're done discussing that.
Any more comment? Liz?
No, I'm just trying to look at when we would have a meeting in 90 days if we could discuss it prior to, if we could put it on the agenda like in,
July? Yeah.
If the funding stops May 8th.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second, okay.
Yeah, we would have to pick up the cost after the grant,
Yeah,
obviously.
right.
so-
Obviously, there's going to be some expenditure to the department from that period because, as Mike indicated from his information, it looks like around May 3rd.
May 3rd.
And that's why I would say it would be a definitive period for this transition. To just go ahead and pull the plug on it, it might be extremely difficult for a transition to happen in this very small window of time. I do not want to put the department in any kind of position of jeopardy. That's by no means. It's the whole idea of public safety, not to have recklessness. But I do believe that it's not going to hurt if we put an end period on if it's 90 or 120 days or something like that, and that this is, and notify that this position will dissolve. And it will give the chief enough time to, A, petition extremely hard for that grant, and B, look at other means, C, come back to us with a really in-depth report of what the benefits are and have been to the department, and go forward from there.
I think Liz might have brought up a good point to coordinate it with the board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that July date is, but
It's, I believe we have a meeting July 17th.
we could easily amend that.
Yeah.
Just did a 1 year, just,
Yeah, so, what the heck's the date today? Today's the
I would
7th.
just put the date.
Yeah, July 17th. Or,
But Chief, I just kind of want to talk about two separate things. I think we,
Yeah.
and as well as my colleagues here, I think we have two separate thoughts going on. Is one, Harvey's continuation does not stop Chief from hiring more firemen, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So I don't want that misconception going on, because I'm also in favor that we need to hire more, and if that's, if there was an either or, then we need to hire more firemen, but we're not in an either or situation. But then the other part of this is the grant ending on May 3rd and us having to pick up that cost and how we want to handle that portion of it. Do we want to make some kind of formal extension? I think we kind of have like two pieces going on here. Does that make sense?
As far as,
You're looking at me.
as
Does that
far
make sense?
as the labor and benefits, that's always been paid to Mr. Holland, the same as all of the other firefighters, comes out of the same fund.
Right, he would be an at-will employee, which Chief has budgeted for
Right.
a year, past the grant.
that way we could address it at the July meeting.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay.
But so, just so you know, so after wages and benefits are all paid, the county department forwards me all of the quarterly expenses, and I actually go on the Safer Grant website and request for reimbursement.
Mhm.
So I think what you're asking is where would the money come from? It would come out of the same fire fund as all of the other general payroll.
Okay.
Mr. Rowan?
Well, I'll make a motion to extend the contract offer to Mr. Holland.
Just the employment,
Oh.
not a contract.
Excuse me, just 1 second, Michael. Yep, that is it's an employment contract. But excuse me one moment, we have some of the public. And
Oh,
I
excuse
beg
me.
your pardon, I didn't mean to. Lot going on here. Yes, sir. Name for the record.
Bob West, 350 Farnsworth.
what date is the grant granted? You know, when the application is supposed to be applied for. When do they make the decision of when they issue the grant to whoever? What is that date?
Chief,
I think you said
unknown at this time.
Unknown.
Oh, yeah, you mean the new application you're saying, or the?
Well, when you apply for it, it's gotta be in a certain time period.
Right.
I'm sure they tell you, okay, the grant is gonna be decided at what time, what date that they will issue the new grant.
Yeah, we just, you know, I wish it worked that way where, you know, when you put out that application, you know that. We just don't know. There's a, you know, you could hear you got rejected within a few weeks, and then you could go months before you hear, you know, you're amongst a small group that got, you know, selected. Yeah.
When you applied 4 years ago, what was the time frame that you received an answer, whether you were accepted or not, or when you did get the grant money?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look exactly when that was. It was several months after. You know,
I'm not sure that's
Yeah.
I'm not sure we can count on that, though. There might not be a regular time frame. It could come quicker, come sooner. I'm not sure we can count on that.
Yeah. I wish I could predict, you know.
But even look at number 1.
Question?
Well, we would change that.
Supervisor, Rick?
I beg your pardon?
I'm
Sorry.
Got a question
Yes,
back there.
please go ahead.
More importantly is, do we know when?
Did you, stand up and identify.
Susan Deal, 9170 Twin Lakes Drive. More importantly than when you're notified the grant is, if this current grant ends on May 3rd, when does the new grant year start? May 4th? And go like this? So whatever
Yeah.
we incur possibly, let's say you put a 90-day carryover, would that 90 days be covered in the new grant, even though you're not maybe notified that you win the grant till September or something like that? When is the start date of this new grant is the most important thing for reimbursement?
Well, usually what occurs is once you know, sometimes, you know, you get a grant and you have to hire somebody and it takes weeks or a few months to get them going. So a lot of times that the clock starts when you actually bring that person on. There's a little bit of leeway with the grant process in order to accommodate some of these time frames.
Okay, so it's not
Yeah.
like the federal grants are usually, July 1 to June 30th, and if you don't hire somebody till September, then you will get money until September, but you still have to spend it within the grant year, and that is not that type of grant.
Well, what we're going to do is, what we'd like to try to do is if we haven't fully spent down that grant by that date that the treasurer, Mr. Roman indicated, you know, we will ask for a possible extension or you know, to use up the remainder of those funds. I don't know, were you able to discuss that?
I will address that. I will ask them if they would be willing to extend the time, because we have not used it all up yet. You're correct.
Yeah, and I had heard that there is a process of being able to ask for that. Now, would we get that guaranteed? I don't know, but there's a good
I'll
chance.
investigate and let you know if there's even an option.
Yeah.
If there's an option, I'll let you know.
Yeah, and I think even with that, our accounting department figured it might only carry us into June with that, yeah.
She's earning her raise.
Love the on-the-spot stuff.
Because there's a change in the ordinance.
Because we didn't grant it yet.
Just an FYI.
I'm looking at her smiling over there.
However many months.
3.
3 months would take it to.
It's a little short.
It's a little light.
July, August 8th, right?
Let's-
Because it expires, what, May 8th?
Let's see.
So it
80, 90
expires.
days.
I would just say for a contemporary period.
It's a 3rd, right? Not the 8th. Where do you guys get the 8th date from? I
I thought it
have
was the
3rd.
third. Yeah,
I
We
have
got it.
3rd.
We got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Liz.
Mr. Supervisor, can I make a motion
Yes, you may.
to authorize the supervisor to enter into a contract to extend the employment of our recruitment officer consistent with the terms of the proposed contract for a period to end on July 31st of 2018.
Have a motion, looking for support?
Would you mind
Question?
rereading it, please?
Yes, I'd like to authorize the supervisor to enter into a contract to extend the employment of our recruitment officer consistent with the terms of the proposed contract for a period to end on July 31st of 2018.
Have a motion?
The contract that's in front of you specifically states it's for a year throughout, and it wasn't prepared by my office. So that allows the supervisor to have the employment lawyer modify the contract that's in front of you so that it ends on July 31st.
Of 18.
That's correct.
Correct.
But that doesn't address then what happens if the grant comes through before that.
We'll talk about it at the July meeting.
I have a suggestion that we add to that, unless the grant is obtained. That puts the grant people on notice that this person is gonna end unless they
That's,
approve it.
I can put that into the agreement.
What do you want to do?
Right to the end of that, just say, as, ends 7/31/1918, unless the grant is approved. So that they know this person is not gonna be employed by White Lake Township unless the grant is approved. Just a
I'll
little
support that.
phraseology there that maybe the grant people say,
Better do something.
better do something.
I agree, it's a possibility. Okay, so we will reflect that as such.
I will amend my motion to,
Chief, do you have any input on that?
I like that phraseology that is suggested.
I'll
I think that
support
would
that,
be
Mr. Roman.
helpful.
so I'll amend my motion to incorporate Mr. Powell's suggestion.
We'll hash that all out. Just remember what he
You
said.
get all that, Amy?
So say say the grant is denied before July. Then will no longer continue either way.
Unless we extend them in July.
Unless we decide to extend them in July. We'll have time to look at reports, see what the benefits and we'll get a full detailed analysis of what this position
We'll
encompasses.
get to do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get to do this again. So, very good. I have that motion. I have support. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks.
All right.
Wow.
I'm missing a pen. Okay, sorry. That's all right. Nope, I think we handled that as best we could, so. We have to, yeah, Mike, add your verbiage to that. Okay, Item 9, let's try that again. Item 9F, request approval of professional fee for appraisal of 10951 Highland Road, Kroger. I will acquiesce to you, Janine.
That is the new Kroger building, and they appealed their 2017 value, which we anticipated they would do, and just for an appraisal of it. And we did receive in front of you today, 2 quotes, which basically got up to the 8,000. It's 6,500 for the first year, but I know they're gonna do it 2018. There's no reason why they would do that.
Question, Gene. Do you know what the tax effect is, or what they're looking for? No, in other words,
They throw out a number that they can't possibly mean. I mean, I think they were saying that the building was worth less than $1 million. I don't remember exactly, but they always just throw a number out there. They don't really mean that that's what they think it's worth. They just kind of all just to say, you know,
That's their starting point.
yeah, that's their starting point, basically. So it's kind of hard to use that number that they give us.
and you don't have a choice. You have to get an appraisal then to
Well, I
fight.
do really like the one that gave you the 2-page one. I think it's amazing. Because he says that he'll do like a stage, split in stages. So the first stage is $2,000, and we can use that as a negotiation tool. So I talked to Mike Homier about that, and he said, we'll just have him do the first stage, and then we'll see what he comes up with, and we'll use that to negotiate if need be. And if negotiations don't work and they're not willing, I mean, he crunched some numbers and for him, he felt that it was definitely worth it to do this.
So you're
You have to
saying
look at
spend
the-
2,000 and hope to settle, come to an
Yes.
agreement with the Kroger's?
Right, yeah.
And that'll establish a benchmark of value.
Yeah, and that's the
From
thing
that
is,
point.
you can't just look at, well, okay, so for 1 year, it's gonna cost us this much money. You're gonna have your taxable value lowered to a certain amount, and you're only gonna be able to go by the rate of inflation after that, so. It's gonna affect you every year after that, it's not just a 1-year thing.
So it's important to establish
Yeah.
that value.
Wasn't the law changed recently, though, for the big box stores?
They didn't change the law, they changed it so that, or they're working on changing it so that they can't use dark stores in a store that's
Correct.
actually open.
Do you think Kroger's is trying to use that technique to value the property, or do you?
It wouldn't surprise me, except that, the Court of Appeals, they went to the Court of Appeals for the one up in the UP, and, the jurisdiction won, so that basically sent it back to the tribunal to look at again, because they did use dark stores. And
We have that going for us.
In Escanaba.
Yeah, so,
So are you looking for a motion right now for the 2,000?
no, for the 8,000,
Entire
up to 8,000.
But the game plan would be to start with this.
Yeah, we'll start with the 2.
I don't know if anyone else had questions.
I have a question, and Mr. Supervisor, if I can just share an impression, and it just seems, and maybe it's because we don't hear the results of the lawsuits. And, we sit here year after year authorizing $8,000 on appraisals and the attorney's fees, and we hear through grapevine that we lost this one and we lost that one, and I've not received any report at all from the township in 10, 15 years as to the benefit of actually doing this. So I understand the concern that if we go to the dark store or something and we lower those rates all the way down, we live with that really for the foreseeable future. But also, if we spend $25,000 in fighting something and lose anyway, we as board members, at least the trustees, have no concept whether we win any of these things or not. And it'd be really great. I know you have all the time in the world. If there was someone that could go back 5, 10 years and say, all right, we have battled this one, and overall we've been on the positive side. Or we would have lost this much money if we didn't pursue the tribunal. It's really difficult for me to authorize spending all this money and never hear back that it was worthwhile. And that concerns me.
Understood. However, and I agree with you. As a trustee, I was never privy to that information, never seemed to hear about it. I mean, obviously, we have our updates when we have township business of a sort, but we don't necessarily hear these particular items. We may want to take and do a little bit of a cursory review on some of this stuff. It's not something that I want on my desk tomorrow by 9 a.m. Okay, 10:30 be fine. But we'll take a look at tribunal judgments and sort of see, maybe get a snapshot of where the township has been. However, in this particular case, I believe we are forced. Our hand is forced because the value is so low on that building that if we establish that, we are going to have an issue.
Oh, and I totally concur, and I like Janine's position. If we go with this one, we can sneak up and slowly spend that $8,000.
Right.
But it'd be very eye-opening. Let's put it this way: if we won every single one we went for, nobody would file a lawsuit against us because we win them all.
Mm-hmm.
If we lose them all, everybody would be filing against them. So somewhere in the middle there, I'd really like to know if we're coming out positive or negative in the township.
Janine, when was the last time one of the township's tax appeals actually went to judgment?
And we actually went to trial and everything. I want to say, well, I know it was Alpine. That was like 2006. So we actually have not gone to trial.
So the purpose, as far as I understand it, for White Lake's purpose, the purpose of getting an appraisal is to have an educated number to negotiate with, and you ultimately settle these.
I didn't even know that, because it's never.
It's
bought back.
very rare.
It's very, very infrequent.
Just a comment too, so the board knows. Our township charges the school systems for us to print their tax bills and to collect those taxes. And when I compute how much I'm gonna charge those schools, I do take these appraisals into account. Okay, so it wouldn't be fair to say that we're actually eating all of this. Some of it does get passed down.
And the attorney's fees as well?
I'd have to look and see.
Okay, and I didn't know
don't
that
know
either.
I don't know
So-
about the attorneys. I know the appraisal fees were. Probably the attorney fees as well, because those attorney fees are gonna be on your profit and loss statement.
They're on my.
Calculated costs of the operation.
And while we're on the attorney fees, I don't know the last time, I mean, you probably have one a year that you give to our firm. Janine does most of them in-house on her own without involving the attorneys.
So a report like that would give us a great idea of how this actually functions then.
Yep. I'll look back in my crystal ball to 2006.
We did lose that one, by the way. And we took it to Court of Appeals and lost there too.
Oh, bummer. Yeah.
And I still think it was wrong.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to, go ahead, Michael.
Make a motion to spend not to exceed $8,000 on the appraisal to fight the Kroger company.
Item 9F.
Item 9F.
Does that mean we're awarding it to the Gannon Group? Which is the one with the $2,000 out of the two appraisals, or the appraisal?
You have.
You need that as part of your motion?
I don't need it, but if you want to.
Okay, if you don't need it, then
Just leave it to Janine's discretion, assessor's discretion.
Can leave it up to my.
I have a motion, looking for support.
I'll support.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you very much. Okay, item 9H, Ivy Glen PD. You gonna tell us a story about a moving lot line?
I'll try to tell you an abbreviated story. I scanned over to you on April 13th, and this all came kind of last minute through the process, so I apologize it didn't get to you sooner. The scan was odd when it came through, so I printed it in normal size, normal scale for you tonight. But I have one correction to make because the microscopic plot plan that was in the building file, I believe the setback is 13.4 feet, not 13 feet 4 inches. So the memo you have from me, there's an attached email from Brent kind of letting you know what the situation is at Ivy Glen on lot 17. It's a very odd situation. And I feel the only way to address this, I believe the only way to really address this and fix it reasonably is to grant an amendment to the development agreement, which only you can, and allow for those of us here who process those to finalize that agreement with the developer. So normally you would see that language in front of you, you would have an amendment drafted that you would act on. We did not have time to put that together. So you just have a memo from me and again an email from Brent with some attachments. So there's that stub that's an emergency turnaround that probably will not likely connect to Suchava at any point in time, but it's lined up in a common area that has utility easements in it in the event that in 50 years somebody wants to do that. It's just sort of good planning to make that a possibility. And so that side entry garage and the driveway that leads to it comes off the end of that stub that's on the on both 11 by 17 sheets. The color sheet, the aerial, probably is a little easier to look at. Lot 17 does not have a house on it in that aerial, but you can quite clearly see what exists out there. So the stub Does everybody see the stub kind of in the middle on the north side? That was just to remain like that. It's a fire department turnaround. I have extras.
I'm looking at Pete. He's looking around. I'm like, do you want mine? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, he's drawing pictures.
Which is this one, right?
So yeah, it was just supposed to remain as an emergency turnaround stub. There's no parking in it, no storage of snow that would obstruct the fire department's ability to turn around in it. That's why it was required initially, because a street could not connect through to Bocavina, because there is no easement that allows for that to be the case, though it would have been good planning. It could not happen. So that's kind of where we're at this point. I don't know to what painstaking detail you want me to go through this, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. But again, the recommendation and Brent's recommendation is that we request that you authorize us to work with the township attorney, supervisor, and clerk to finalize the necessary documentation with the developer who happens to own this home. It has not been conveyed because of this issue, has not been conveyed to another owner yet. It should also be mentioned, it's mentioned in my memo, that the master deed must be amended to address this as well, because what was common area that everybody had access and rights to now becomes somebody's driveway that this person would not own but would control as a limited common element. So all the neighbors can't park their cars in his driveway, which is the case now. So it's sort of protection for the future owner to kind of clean this up. So.
But they also know that in the event that for some reason 50 years from now the moon and the stars line up and they decide to put this road through that driveway, is it
I had a lengthy discussion with the
at
developer
risk?
about that today, and I've told him that I will not change my opinion that language should be in there. He objects to it, and my job is to make sure that nobody in 30 years looks back and says, what was that person thinking? Why didn't they make these? I'm going to look just north of here. So Suchava dead ends into this property, and whoever was in the position to decide back then provided for easements for water and sewer, but not an easement for cross access, which is why there's a guardrail there and neighbors can't drive to each other's house, which again is poor planning. And I get that there's more to it than that, but so I don't want to compound a mistake. I don't want to be that guy that they wonder what the heck he was thinking. I have to worry enough about that anyway. So, but anyway, yeah. And the other thing I should mention is that I spoke with Mr. Powell about this because he had a concern regarding some screening, and I wanted you to know that though the developer couldn't be here today, he does not object to planting a handful of evergreen trees on the north side of this driveway to kind of knock down any lights that weren't anticipated to be shining north into other neighbors' backyards, because these were all intended to be front entry garages, so you wouldn't have that much of an issue, and he did not have an issue with that, and I told him I would convey that message.
Very good. Any questions from the board? Mr. Lilly.
Supervisor, I had an opportunity to go out and look at this particular piece on Saturday, and really find it hard to believe that both the building department and the builders of the subdivision didn't know better than what this is. I hate to be put behind the 8 ball to simply say the board can fix a problem that's really been going on for years around here. We've made an honest attempt to combine planning and building before building permits are issued, that other aspects of review have been made, and this is just another example. I will be voting no on this. I'm not just going to sit here to be somebody to bail out everybody all the time. So
Understood. Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Supervisor?
Mr. Powell.
What is the dimension that, I think you changed, it's not 13'4", it's how much?
It's 13.4 feet.
Oh, 13.4.
And I got, this is a pretty small scale, and I'm not getting any younger, so you'll forgive me, but I believe that that's the case. And let me look at Brent's memo. Brent's memo doesn't specify.
It's a deficiency 11.8 is what the deficiency.
It's 11.
It can't be 11. It'd be
it's
11.6
11.6 feet. Yeah, rather than, my memo needs to be adjusted to say instead of 13 feet 4 inches, it's 13.4 feet, resulting in a deficiency of 11.6 feet, not 11 feet 8
.6 or
inches.
.8?
Yeah.
That's the required setback per the PUD.
Okay.
Well, and I should mention the zoning ordinance requires a 25-foot side yard setback for a side entry garage, which is makes sense. So there's room to maneuver, and in this case, this was not contemplated when it came through our process. It was not intended to be a lot that could support a side entry garage. That's why it's only 70 feet wide, but that's what was built, and so the vast majority of this driveway is in the common area to make the side entry into the garage. And so what you're doing now by considering this action would be, if you were to approve it, approve a variance, because they can't go to the zoning board of appeals, which would normally be the process if this weren't a PD. Instead, the only option is to permit this, is to amend the development agreement to allow for this to occur in this lot.
I have a couple of questions. Sean, does it make sense, the way the site plan shows, the proposed sidewalk to lead up to the Boca Vina subdivision goes up the east side of this general common element area? That means it would actually cross right through his driveway as he pulls into his garage.
Mhm.
Does it make sense to suggest moving that sidewalk to the west side of the open area instead of the east side?
It's certainly something that if you wish that to be the case, I can speak with them about.
I believe that needs to be addressed.
Well,
That certainly would make some sense.
but I thought the intent was if this road were to continue,
This is not the road, the sidewalk.
so you want the
Sidewalk's going in.
sidewalk to be in, oh,
Sidewalk
it
is
is.
required to be installed, so though there's not vehicular cross-access, pedestrians can get.
Oh, I
So it
didn't
doesn't
realize
matter which side of the drive that sidewalk is on, but it doesn't make any sense to have somebody walk right through somebody's car sitting
No.
in his driveway.
Some kid riding his bike and bumps
Doesn't
into a
make any
car.
sense. So whatever we do, we'd want to move that sidewalk to the west side of the open
Notice
area.
that too, that just
I
doesn't
mean,
make
again, the only thing I can think of is that configuration, because it doesn't perfectly line up, would make it more difficult. Probably that sidewalk would have to come out if the road ever connected. But again, I think the likelihood of the road connecting is slim. But I do think, Mike, that if it's on the east side, if you look at it's easier on the white line drawing. You can see how it leads more direct. I mean, it might be an issue either way, quite honestly.
But pay attention, if we kept it all on the east side and went into the east right-of-way up in Boca Vina, that road could follow it, and it wouldn't have to cross the road if it continually stayed all the way, hit the east the west right-of-way of Boca Vina Road instead of the east right-of-way. There's no sidewalk
I
in
see
Boca
what you're
Vina
saying.
anyway.
Yeah, that's true, because you could just swing the angle of the road differently and still accommodate. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
So, and then I had a question. What's the intent in the agreement as to who maintains this open area? Is it gonna be grow to weeds? Is it gonna be
Oh,
mowed?
it's a common element. It's a common element.
So it's going to be like the road right-of-way going out to Williams Lake Road then? It's going to be mowed by the association?
Yes.
It's gonna be grass?
I would assume it would be seeded and probably not irrigated.
All right. What would...
And I mean, usually in those instances, you worry about neighbors creeping in and eventually taking over what is common area and is not their yard. And
Well, Mike Lufkin, the engineer, had brought a point in one of his reviews that do you want to, say, cut just the driveway that's constructed to be converted to limited common element and leave the portion adjacent to it that's still next to the driveway as common element? I think there was that discussion.
right, and I think we would and that would be worked out with the master deed.
Well, it would also be in the plan, right?
I don't know.
Well, the driveway on the
It's really-
private
this
property...
is just a setback issue.
So if you look at the picture
Yeah,
in the current emergency turnaround area,
yes.
that is all
General common
general
element.
common element.
Right.
Not all of this is going to be his driveway. right? He doesn't need all of this apron, he doesn't need all of this cement work for his driveway.
he's
You
gonna
can
use
see
it
it right
though.
here. You can see it in this 8.5 by 11 shows you
Yeah.
where his
So
property line
the,
is.
so the question is, do we want them to convert the entire area of the going all the way up to the driveway, that whole portion, up to where the driveway ends to limited common element, or curb it just right up along the driveway?
Quite frankly, I'd be in favor of just leaving a general common element. If this road were going all the way up to Boca Vina and tied right in, we wouldn't even be here right now, because the driveway could come off of that road and serve the
Correct.
side entry
Exactly.
garage. So there's no difference. It just doesn't go all the way through. General common element, the question is, general common element features are plowed by the association, they're mowed by the association,
Used
so,
by everybody.
and can be used by everyone. That's correct.
People can park in there.
That's correct.
Well, not in this case, but because it's the lawn.
But somebody from down the street's gonna come in and park their car there just because? I mean, that's gonna be rare.
Well, that
I mean, you could
depends.
park.
It depends on if
Let
you
me
have.
back up. So you're saying, you're concerned because somebody could come along and park their car right in the middle of somebody's driveway anywhere up and down this road because it's general common element.
Oh, I have a number of concerns.
We have a neighbor dispute going on that could lead to something like that currently as a result of this.
However,
All right. That being said, I suppose we leave that up to the attorney and the planner. I would be certainly in favor of putting some trees to protect the northern resident. Two things. The resident to the west, Sean, is going to have car lights, and I don't know if that's their bedroom windows on the east side of their home. So as the homeowners for Lot 17 come in, their lights are going to swing in and they're going to sweep across the home that wasn't intended to have car lights flashing against the east side of their home.
Yeah, it's going to be more of an issue for that lot on the west side than
Correct.
it is any other lot. Yeah.
And then certainly the lots going straight up into Boca Vina, those homes have never had lights on them before and were not intended to. And so I think a landscaping, stopping those lights going north, and something to be done along the east home of Lot 16.
My question for you, didn't this homeowner already know there was the possibility of a road going in there?
Yeah, but right now, it would only be used by an occasional emergency vehicle, not a homeowner coming in every night coming home,
Yeah,
and their kids and everybody
But the
else.
thought, like, if I was buying that house, in the back of my mind,
It's a corner lot.
I would think that one day this road could go through.
Yep.
You would think that, but it never works out that way.
Right.
They're the first ones in line
Remember, the
saying, "How
realtor
could this
told them
happen?"
that was never gonna happen.
Yeah, sure, I'm
We
sure
hear
they
that all the
did.
time. Yeah, that's right.
Um,
But you're right.
I don't want to
Corner lot.
complicate Mr. O'Neill's
Yeah, I'm just
job
trying to
here.
keep it simple,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
the idea of forcing them to put trees up.
The only thing I'm going to say is if we move the sidewalk to the west
It
side.
eliminates the trees.
Well,
planting.
but I'm also going to say I'm going to work with the developer and Mr. Potter to make sure that we're not putting these trees right over top of the utility lines, so we're not causing an issue. So we'll need to mark those and try to use trees and locations that aren't going to be problematic for the utilities down the road.
Sidewalk is less of a problem, but a full-grown pine tree is a problem over a sanitary sewer.
Right, and we'll just have to see if moving the sidewalk is feasible to the west side without then eliminating that ability to plant on that side. We'll look at that.
That's only a forced main, and so that's only gonna be 5 feet down, so, yeah.
Right, 3 feet minimum distance between any trees.
Yep.
But
So Sean,
if I may though, keep in mind this side like it was a possibility for this driveway to go through.
Yeah.
But they're like almost a full car length short of the required setback for a side access.
Yeah, if it was stubbed, they would have had 2 front yards, and those would have been probably 90-foot wide lots, not
Right.
70s, and we would have made that happen. I mean, this is there is a hope that there'll be a connection in the future, but it would be a significant reduction in what the standards would be in order to have that.
Yeah,
And go ahead.
The issue, if I'm hearing it correctly, that the other resident in the neighborhood that brought this up was that essentially this is going to limit access to the common element for the rest of the neighbors.
That was one of the
Potentially.
things. Yeah, it was one
I
of the
think if we
issues.
plant additional trees in and around the eastern edge of the house to the west, then you're almost restricting it even more. You know,
However, if you move the sidewalk to the west, because
direct
that
access.
driveway does not encompass that entire
Right.
access.
Yeah.
It's only a segment, so if you go on the very left end of that and you run a sidewalk, that gives a very defined
Access.
area and also eliminates the problem, which I share the same concern. Not that it will be traveled, but it could be traveled, and it's too close for, I'm concerned about kids on a bike or something, or somebody pushing
Yeah.
a
The
big
only-
buggy or something.
The only thing I'll say is if you know, there's somebody who lives in lot 16 who we haven't heard from, and I'm just saying if they call me and say, well, I bought this house and I didn't want the sidewalk on my side, and now you're switching it after the fact to,
It's in the common area, though.
yeah, I'm bringing it up just so,
It's within the common element.
yeah.
Yeah.
This has been an issue that we've been talking about at length with the engineer and Sean. I mean, this is
a
trying to
few
figure
weeks
out
ago.
how to fix it at this point.
yeah, it's already built.
Yeah, my concern with Mr. Lilly's position is he's not providing any option except to rip the house down. And I don't think, unless you want to pay attorneys, and I don't want to pay attorneys. So this is an option of getting
Especially
out
when
of
they got a
paying attorneys.
raise.
Yeah, she just got a raise and we're going to pay her? No. So I think that there's no alternative but to work with them.
She thinks I don't
You're
call
up.
her now.
You're absolutely right on your observation. There's no alternative for the board to do it. And I don't like to be sitting here of something that we've talked about for well over 8 years about this review process that has created this problem, and it has created many more, and nothing has changed.
Understand?
That's what's upsetting with me. We've had all these discussions, even that occurred tonight, at the time that the sub was developed.
Yes.
What was gonna happen with this little turnaround thing. Everybody should have known that there was no side opening garages to do that.
Yes.
Whether it be our building department as well as the builder. And I hate debating those things, Mike, that we're the pawn in the process.
Point
This
well
has been
taken.
going on for a long, long time. It's time to stop.
I agree.
Mr. O'Neill, you
Thank
have
you.
the most intimate detail on this, if correct? 'Cause I don't have.
On the process, Brent would be the one to talk to you about specific building questions. I would be the one on the site plan end of it. I'm not sure what your
Well,
question would be, but
what I would have preferred, since I know that you just got this to us tonight, I would have preferred to have like a 5-minute break to be able to read this and really had a chance to digest it and then come to you with answers and discussed with the board. So I'm trying to listen to everybody and take it all in, but this was just handed to me. So,
had emailed it out last week and.
but this version. This
Oh, it's
version
the
is
same
just-
thing. This is just larger.
Yeah, easier to read.
Nothing's changed. It's the same information.
I don't know if I got that then, because what I got is a different version. Okay, okay, so I'll go back and look. I guess I thought this was this was a little different.
No, it's the same one. All right. Mr. O'Neill?
Anything else to add? We're just trying to straighten this out, so.
Mr. Powell, I would
Yes.
like you to consider, be the architect of this motion, because some of what you're saying, I agree with you completely, but I want to make sure I don't misconstrue something.
All right, let me make an attempt at a motion. Mr. Supervisor, I move that this board approve an amendment to the development agreement allowing for a 13.4-foot side yard setback to the common area to allow for a side entry garage to exist on lot 17, subject to the sidewalk being constructed along the west side of the common area tied and extended into the west right-of-way of whatever crazy road name that is up there. Chakava. That's the Bocavina roadway.
Careful.
Yes. And that trees, spruce or pine trees be planted as suggested by the planning department to prevent headlights from shining to the north into the Bocavina subdivision that were never intended to shine into their subdivision.
Mike, if I may,
Yes.
you have essentially limited this motion so that if the sidewalks don't work or the trees don't work, we'd have to come back to the township board.
Well, the trees will definitely work.
Well, I
without a
thought
doubt.
there was a question about the utilities.
There's-
We'll make it work.
There's
It
a
just-
water
we have
main
to
on
work
the east
around
side
it.
and a
Put the
sanitary
sidewalk.
sewer on the west side, so
But-
that will definitely.
But maybe doing something like you do with site plan approvals, where you say you approve it, authorize the township supervisor and Sean to negotiate the terms consistent with your recommendations today.
I like that. That's exactly what I said, and authorize the planning director to work with the attorney and supervisor and clerk to finalize the modifications in the development agreement.
Incorporating your comments today.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I already said.
Incorporating your previous comments.
Exactly right.
Got that, Amy? Yeah. More or less? I think I know what the intent, I know what the intent is.
And then I believe that Rick and Terry will have to sign the amendment, sign the development agreement
So
amendment.
I
think.
authorize them to do that.
Yes. Either or both.
All right, we have a motion, such as this. Okay, I like that. I'm looking for support.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. No, thank you, moving on.
Wow.
Okay. Item I, request approval of the 2018 dust control program with the Road Commission of Oakland County. Every year, we enter into this agreement. It's that time of year again. We would like to see 5 applications for the township. There's an attached schedule as to the streets that the Road Commission has selected, and ultimately they will provide a schedule once this is approved as to when those applications will take place. I do not have that schedule, but it will happen. The 5 application program is approximately $62,790. We have, I believe, in this fund set aside for this to the tune of right around $55,000 or $56,000. I don't have the exact dollar amount. So we'll have to do an amendment to.
Excuse me, Mr. Supervisor, I don't believe we have I.
Yeah, we did get I.
You didn't get I?
No.
Someone else can share my eye.
I don't think I want to.
I didn't have any.
I beg your pardon.
Missing a few things.
Give these guys
Yeah, here. Anybody wants to see this one?
These guys can share it.
That was added on today.
No, I remember seeing this.
Would you like me to run a
I
copy?
thought it was emailed out.
It's not even on my agenda.
Yeah, we don't,
It was added on.
was added on
It was
today.
There was
Right,
an
but it-
amended agenda too.
But
Last
we
night
didn't get
got it.
this. We have it now.
Correct, thank you. I believe this was emailed out. I will have to follow up on that. That's yours. Where's my note? I did start out with that.
I remember seeing something like that.
First, so this is a program that we participate in every year, okay? And the cost on that is a little bit higher this year as chloride has gone up. And that's what the county is the primary provider of this service and does it at the best price.
So we spent roughly around $50,000
We spent,
per year.
yeah, a little over 50. And I think we have 55 right now, so
Okay.
If we don't get any dust control?
pretty much, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Lilly.
I'll make a motion to Authorize the supervisor to sign if necessary to participate in the dust control program for 2018 in the amount of $62,790.53.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion looking for support.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, Mr. Powell.
This is, in my opinion, totally different than the road graveling program. As you know, I was opposed to the road graveling program. If you live on a gravel road, which is really more defined as a dirt road, you can't even survive a summer without chloride.
No.
And so I will be voting for this, even though I'm against
I understand.
throwing gravel
And
down.
I appreciate your...
No, the Cooley's
Yes.
paved.
Okay, we have motion, we have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to trustee, oh, wait a minute. No, we have item J. Terry, you said there's something we have to...
Yeah, at the last meeting, there was a motion made by trustee Powell, supported by clerk Lilly, to approve the rezoning request from ag to suburban farm for parcel 12-21-201-004 as presented. That motion was passed by a voice vote of 6 members of our board. The problem that we're having, and even though that the board passed this motion, it was not advertised in the newspaper after the fact that it had passed. So what we need to do is entertain the motion. It wasn't published in the newspaper.
Okay, there's a requirement to publish it to notify people of the
Within
change.
30 days.
After the fact.
After.
Oh, afterwards, you have to
On
notify.
October
I
17th.
apologize, I didn't know that, so.
So, in order to correct that situation, we need to make another motion in order to then re-advertise, and that'll be done. Basically correcting an error that was made
Okay,
by the newspaper, so.
kind of like a lot line issue.
We verified that we were not charged for the ad either, that they didn't run, so.
It was submitted, so for the
Yes.
township's part, the township did everything right. It was adopted by the township board, there's a requirement to be published, it was submitted, and it wasn't published. So, I mean, there was a risk in just publishing now, because the statute does say within 30 days, but since timing really isn't an issue because nothing's happened, we thought we'd err on the side of caution and bring it back to the board, have you re-adopt it, publish it within the required time frame, so there's no question going forward.
The property owner is aware of this and is in support of this, and there's no issue.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize this to be published. And
You're approving it again.
and approving
I move the same motion that I moved last month.
All right.
Your motion, Mike, just for the record, was to approve a rezoning request from ag to suburban farm for parcel 12-21-201-004 as presented.
That's exactly what I remember.
Okay, I can see.
Who seconded it?
Absolutely.
I'll support your motion.
Okay. Mr. Powell?
Wait,
Mr.
so, I'm sorry. So am I gonna show in the minutes just this motion, or do I need to show also that it's something about advertising?
No, just treat it like a brand-new motion.
Just these words again?
Right.
Okay, that's all.
And it was supported by Terry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Your
you.
motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Moving on to trustee comments. Ms. Voorhees.
White Lake Historical Society is having an open house series throughout the summer. The dates are June 6th and June 20th, and June has a wedding theme based on displays throughout the house and throughout the other buildings. July has a patriotic theme, and the days for those are July 11th and the 18th. August, which is to me sounds most interesting, is eclectic. August 1st and the 15th. The White Lake Historical Society is also accepting still the information for the White Lake Veterans book that they have planning to work on. So if you know any White Lake Township veterans, contact the Historical Society. They have a series of questions. I personally have not seen it, but they want to put it and kind of get all the history of all our White Lake veterans. In regards to Parks and Rec that I said on, our meeting for the month was canceled. due to lack of agenda. That does happen to us throughout the year. Which, however, that allowed me to free up the same night because I'm sure most of the people in this room have heard about the, I'm drawing a blank again, the Commerce Township meeting that was held on that same night for the soil erosion. Which was really, yeah, thank you, it was not soil erosion, but it was vapor. It was very vapory intrusion, very interesting meeting. Courtney was the project manager from the MDEQ. They're truly actively involved with what's going on, with doing different things in order to figure out how this happened. This happened approximately 20 years ago.
30.
Okay, I was using the number they used.
1988
Okay.
was one that actually went to litigation.
Yeah, okay, I agree, you're right. It was from the dry cleaners and the gas station that was over there, but seriously, they're actively involved with trying to figure out how to correct it. And it's mostly, and I'm not good with north, south, east, and west, pretty much most of the vapors go across into the Commerce Township area. And it was very well attended. So I thought it was very informative to go. I learned a lot there. It was just like, I had this, anyone's interested in me, or call MDEQ, they were very helpful. It was MDEQ was there, Oakland County was there, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services was there. So it was a very, very good meeting.
Very good. Anything else?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ruggles?
I don't really have a whole lot to add. Planning Commission last month, we approved Walmart's seasonal outdoor display area. Started to look at changing some ordinances, kind of some in-house cleanup stuff. We have a meeting on Thursday. We'll be going through ordinance changes again. It was actually pretty lengthy last month, but we were there after 10, right? Which is kind of not normal for Planning Commission. So we'll be discussing that again. And for everybody going to MTA, sorry I can't make it this year. So have fun. Hopefully Lisa's dinner is good. Eat a lot. Eat some for me.
Ms. Smith?
Okay, let's see. Make sure I get the right date here. Next library board meeting is Wednesday, April 26th at 6:45. A couple quick library things I want to mention. Instead of the mini golf fundraiser this year, they're going to try something new, and there's going to be a silent auction instead from April 21st to May 2nd. So again, this is
What are the dates, Liz?
April 21st to May 2nd, and it's just open silent auction in the lower level, similar to the mini golf silent auction, but this will be a longer time so more residents can get to it if they're interested. So just trying something new. Hopefully it's a success for the library and for the Friends of the Library. I do want to address again and correct something. Pete did mention that there is an open spot on the library board. Again, I cannot speak for that library board. I'm not on their board. So that's up to them how they want to address that or advertise that. It will be a special election. I believe he said filing deadline was the 21st. That's not an accurate date. I think it's the 24th.
It's the 24th.
Okay, and so something else I want to mention is if you have library board questions, those need to go to the library board. This is not the library board, and I cannot speak for the library board. I only mention what they ask me to mention and communicate between both boards, and it's known, Pete, that you're not a library supporter, so I would hope that you don't continue to attack the library board, but you come with positive questions, and I'm sure any of the library board members would like to address that. But when you come in a format of public comment, I can't address you then, so I can only address you now. As you heard earlier in this evening, the library board is, the library plans are moving along. And let's see. And then I wanted to mention a couple of things in the community. with this darn weather and the snow, the Great Rake was last weekend, and it was wonderful. I had some help from the fire department and the police department. I want to give a wonderful, sincere thank you to Chief Keller. He's not here this evening, but please pass it along to Chief Keller and his wife and Paul from the fire department. Believe it or not, the Great Rake has been around a long time, but for whatever this reason, I don't know if people aren't thinking spring yet or not, but they had no volunteers in White Lake, so we quickly gathered a few folks and we raked some disabled and elderly residents' homes and yards in the snow. But it got done and it was a fun day. So next year, if you're interested in that, it's a great program, or if you are a resident that need help in your yard, it's a great rake. It's put on by Faith in Action, and you can sign up through the township. You can contact the township or OSHA. And if you are a resident or you know of a resident that needs help spring cleanup, I'm happy to assist next year as well. And then I attended the DEQ meeting along with Andrea and Terry, and it was very informative. I too brought the Do Care plan if anyone was interested. It was a great explanation, and Aaron was there, and he is more than competent and willing to answer any questions that any residents might have. And I'll stick around if anyone wants to look at this, and Andrea has one that she can share too. It was a DEQ meeting. Had a lot of questions why that wasn't held here in White Lake. It wasn't our meeting and it wasn't Commerce's meeting, but it was the DEQ meeting that just happened to be hosted in Commerce. So I hope that settles that of why our board didn't address it. It was a DEQ meeting. So I also want to mention, and I'm sure Supervisor Cole will speak about it as well, as we have a special board meeting on May 8th to address all of the up-and-coming millages in the township. First, excuse me, it got changed. Yeah, May 1st. And that's here at 7 o'clock. And that will address all the up-and-coming millages. And then lastly, I want to mention that I'm wearing blue this evening, which coincidentally a couple of my colleagues are. I don't know if they are just happen to wear blue or not, but it's Awareness for Child Abuse Month, and I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Sometimes you see blue pinwheels out and about, and as a child advocate, that's very near and dear to my heart. And I want to mention that one form of child abuse is bullying, and we have a terrible bullying issue in our community. It's rampant on social media. It's in one of our school districts, and my heart goes out to those children that are affected. And if you have a child that's being bullied or you are a bully, I on a personal note, will pray for you. So I want to just address that and be a strong advocate for those that are being bullied. And I, for one, will not be bullied or intimidated, and I'll continue to stand up for children in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I'm not ready for you, Mr. Powell, yet. Mr. Rumble.
You're still making a list.
I know he is. I guess he's not done, so.
You'll make a statement. I would just like to make a quick statement in regard to our fire department. Whatever happens with this grant renewal, I just want to publicly thank, and I think we should all thank Harvey Holland for all of the great work that he has provided our community over the last 4 years. That's all I had, Rick.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lilly.
Thank you. I just like everyone to know that every year I have had the responsibility of giving out tributes to both police and fire, and have for a lot of years. And part of my tribute is the police and fire services are some of the most important services that we can provide for our residents. So I don't want anybody that's in the audience tonight to think that any of my thoughts tonight were opposed to making those services as great as possible, but I'm one member of this board that kind of has raised a bunch of firefighters in my family, so it's hard for me to not hear different aspects. I have a son that's a captain here. I have a son-in-law that's a full-time firefighter, and I have a grandson that's on call. So I hear a lot of things that try to pass those things on to the supervisor here that do. But most importantly, besides just providing public services, we as the Township Board have a responsibility to monitor and make sure that those services are what we as a board expect them to be. So that was part of my thought tonight, that we haven't had an opportunity to review those services that Harvey has done, and I think it's really important that those be looked at, and for us as a board to recognize, is it accomplishing what we want it to do, or is it not, or do we need to change directions a little bit? And certainly the directions of manning Station 3 has been a priority for a long, long
Absolutely.
time. So, that's really all I have to say as regards to the conversation, at least with me. Say, grew up as a firefighter myself, so my heart's with them. So,
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We were just told that Barbara Bush passed away at about 8 o'clock tonight, and so I thought I'd pass that word along. Certainly an elegant lady. I also wanted to thank Elaine, who has nothing but patience with those of us that want to, or at least try to understand accounting. And there's a difference between private sector business accounting and municipal accounting, and what red means more money and not less money. And so she's very patient with me when I come in and want to learn from her. Also wanted to point out that not only do we certainly respect the fire department, but my mother's in the Independence Village, and it just seems like virtually every time I visit her, they're there trying to take care of someone. And so I absolutely admire the fire department and thank them. Mr. Supervisor, I don't know if we have a policy or some way to do this in the township, but, and I'm going to destroy this word, I know. I think it would be a really great idea to recognize any centenarians that we might have in the township. Give them a certificate or something. To live to be 100 years old in this township, it would be an awesome
Would you
recognition.
Want to?
I've taken care of my mother-in-law, who's 99 and a half, and no, I do not want to live that long. But they are absolutely need recognition for surviving that long. And it'd be awesome if we could do that from the board.
That's not a bad idea.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Supervisor, if I may, I forgot one thing.
Go ahead.
Thank you for mentioning that unfortunate passing of Barbara Bush. I had that on my notes too, and she is a great American. I wanted to make sure, so thank you. Interesting tidbit is she was the second woman to be a mother and wife of a president, so she is quite the lady.
There you go. It's cool. Trivia.
But one thing I wanted to mention that I was hoping just to put in everybody's think tank, I would like to have at least quarterly study session meetings, a second meeting added. Maybe we don't need them every month, but sometimes when we have a lot going on, as we have of late, we're a growing community, we have a lot of things happening, a lot of important decisions to make. I know some of our neighboring communities do it, so I would like to start with the possibility of just a quarterly and see how that goes, and add or take away as needed. So that's something I just wanted to share with you. Think about it. We can come back to it maybe next month, or put it on as an agenda item next month to formally discuss it.
Yep. Very
Thank
good.
you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Well, like I said, I had an opportunity to meet up with Julie Oakes, I believe it is. I may be messing it up, from the Wildlife Division of the Department of Natural Resources. And she put an interesting light on a lot of different things, and I found out about something interesting about the goose relocation program. Okay? And the interesting thing about the goose relocation program is she finds that residents are overwhelmingly in support of it. She says the problem is, and they've proven it with tracking devices, is that oftentimes when they get a neighborhood together and everybody's very enthusiastic to get the geese together and round up and they make a barbecue, I mean, it turns into a social event. And they get the geese and they round them up and they put them off in this truck. They do not dispatch the animals. The animals are generally taken to another state park area, usually some distance away. But the interesting thing is, there's been a few occasions of which they have proven it with tracking devices, that the same geese that they put on that truck beat the truck back to Oakland County, to that lake.
Incredible.
And it's just a very interesting little caveat to that. I thought I would share that because I had no clue. We also have the moot swan that is invasive to this area, is not indigenous. Our trumpeter swans, I did not know how to tell the difference. Trumpeter swan has a black nose, okay? All the other ones have a kind of an orangish yellowish nose. They are not protected. They are not federally protected. They are an invasive species, and when they are removed from a lake, they are dispatched. Okay, so and they are a problem because they are causing problems with a lot of the other game birds that we have and wildlife, and are also extremely aggressive.
That's the ones with the orange noses?
Correct.
They're the bad ones.
The bad guys. Reports are up considerably over this, so there are issues. The other issue that we're having is we're seeing a very, very high rate of growth in coyotes. Okay, more and more. It used to be on occasion. She goes to seminars that deal with natural resource wildlife people throughout the United States, and out west in California, they've had that problem for years, and they're snatching poodles. Okay, so, and that's kind of become common over there. Well, it's starting to happen over here. They've had multiple reports over the last couple of years of small dogs disappearing, and cats and other creatures. And the worry of that is that this is a learned behavior, so the next generation learns it. So if you are or have them near your house, don't feed them. Don't leave things out. Be mindful of your trash, all that type of stuff. If you see them in your yard, yell at them, shoo them off. There are definitely benefits to the coyotes. They keep the rodents down, and they do a good job at that. They are not a real threat to turkeys. A turkey has been known to kill a coyote. Okay, like from the DNR. So they're a formidable foe, but it is something you have to be concerned about with, and we are in an area which is now starting to become a homeland for these types of creatures. But the interesting thing was the turkeys, though. The fact that they are a game bird, and now there's issues with them, and they're trying to figure out how to resolve this because you can't do anything to them. They're a game bird, just like a deer. Can't do anything much with them. But don't feed them. So that's a big thing. We have the MTA coming up, which is our Michigan Townships Association meeting, which will be in Traverse City. A bulk of the board will be attending that. It is a think tank of all the different townships throughout the state. There are over 1,200, I think it is, which is amazing. It's a great time to network throughout all of the different seminars there are. And it's just a great time to learn things about other townships and see what other common elements we have. We all seem to have problems. Some of them are a little more interesting than other problems, but we all seem to have a problem. And this particular issue with the brownfield and contamination is an ongoing problem for all communities. This is nothing new. There are areas around here that we've got contamination. We've done our wellhead protection. Aaron educated me. And I was on the board for that wellhead protection board committee last year. And he provided a map of all the sites. Don't drink any water in the state of Michigan. I mean, it looks like that. It's not that bad, but when you first look at it, it's pretty overwhelming. But a lot of these sites are very limited. They're very small, but they all need to be addressed as time goes on in economics and technology. They now have a technology that they can put in place where they can aerate the ground and eliminate hydrocarbon. They have another technology in place where they literally microwave the ground, and it causes it to go inert. There's another technology where they actually inject bacterial microbes into the ground, and it eats whatever it eats down there, and it becomes inert after it dies. So the technology is improving, but these are concerns, and whenever we have the opportunity to provide safe, quality drinking water to our residents, that is utmost priority that we need to do. So, also, just for the record, we talked about, and Mr. Hankus can now read his notes, the grant was indeed submitted for the park and was received, correct?
We submitted at the end of March, and we'll hear back in December as to whether or not we're successful with the request.
So it is in progress, and that's hopefully moving forward. We will have a special meeting on Tuesday, May 1st. I did this 2 or 3 times, and I apologize. May 1st, and I thought it would be a good time to have just those topics on that meeting, because then we could go in depth with those if people had questions, and it would also give everyone adequate time to prepare whatever projections and documents necessary to show in support of those particular villages, which are so very important to our community. So with that, I say good night, and God bless America, and God bless the Bush family in their hour of grief. And she was a great American woman, and an interesting time in our country. History will show it. For that, I will say we move into an executive session, approval to recess into closed session to consider attorney-client privileges communications in accordance with MCL 15.268H.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that motion.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Who second?
Who supported?
I'll support it. Mr. Powell supported it.
Oh, I moved
moved
it.
your
You moved my motion?
You move.
I made the motion.
Yeah,
I'll second
Who
it.
seconded it? Okay. I thought I made it. Good night, everyone.
You might want to put the coyote.
A motion.
on your,
Yeah, I have to.
your website.
We haven't
Yes,
voted
we
yet.
just got, we got a vote. We have motion, support, roll call vote.
Okay, Liz Smith,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Leary votes yes, Mr. Goldwall.
Yes.
Quick statement.